Tonight we're taking a long, lonely drive down the back roads of Texas, where the highways stretch for miles, and the silence hides more than just the wind. Out here, under the faded glow of old gas stations and the hum of empty power lines, people have found things that can't be explained, and probably never should have been seen. These are 20 of the creepiest things ever found on empty Texas highways. Strange objects, chilling encounters, and real-life horrors that will make you think twice before taking a midnight drive. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake. They leave without subscribing. And by doing that, they miss out on the darkest, most spine-tingling tales from the highways of America. Don't be one of them. Hit subscribe right now, because tonight's trip is just the beginning, and what's waiting out there beyond the headlights is far from over. So, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Tell me in the comments here, because here on Creepy Vibes, the night never really ends, and the road ahead only gets darker. Now buckle up. Let's dive into 20 creepiest things found on empty Texas highways. My name is Daniel Reed, and I'm from Abilene, Texas. I used to drive freight across the state for a living, and in all my years on the road, I've seen plenty that would make a sane man pull over and rethink his life choices. Drunks wandering the shoulder at 3 in the morning. Coyotes staring from the ditch, eyes glinting like coins. Even a few wrecks where the car was still warm but no one was inside. But nothing ever got under my skin like what happened on Highway 287, out near the desert line back in 1999. It was the tail end of July, the kind of night where the air itself hums with heat. I'd been hauling a load of irrigation equipment out of Wichita Falls and planned to stop in Van Horn before sunrise. The desert at night has a way of stretching out time. The road keeps going, and your headlights only cut about 20 yards of that darkness ahead. After a while, it starts to feel like you're driving through a tunnel made of black velvet. I remember the clock on my dash glowing 2:47 a.m., the gas light flashing orange, and the road sign that said, "Last services, 5 miles." I nearly missed the place. The gas station sign was so faded it looked like it belonged to another decade. The lights inside were flickering, half the bulbs dead, and an old soda machine buzzed outside like a trapped hornet. There was one other vehicle parked there, a beat-up red pickup covered in dust, no plates. The whole station looked abandoned except for the glow behind the window and a single open sign that pulsed weakly, like a heartbeat running out of strength. When I went inside, the air was thick with old cigarette smoke and the sour smell of oil. Behind the counter sat an old man, maybe in his late 70s, wearing a trucker cap and a denim shirt so faded it was almost white. He didn't look up when I came in, just sat there staring at a small black and white TV that was showing nothing but static. I cleared my throat. "Evening. Pump still work?" He didn't answer at first, just reached down under the counter and slid a key across to me. One of those old metal keys with a bottle opener on the ring. "Pump 3, he said, voice dry as gravel. "Don't go past mile 23 before sunrise." I gave a little laugh, thinking I'd misheard him. "Sorry, what?" He looked up then, and his eyes caught the flicker from the TV screen. They were cloudy and pale like marbles. "You heard me," he said. "Don't go past mile 23 before the sun's up. The road's different past there at night." I thought he was joking. Some local superstition to mess with out-of-towners. I thanked him, took the key, and went back outside. The desert wind had picked up, hot and dry, carrying sand that whispered against the windshield. I filled the tank, locked the cap, and looked out down the highway. It was just an endless ribbon disappearing into nothing. No houses, no light, no noise but the wind. Inside, when I went to pay, the man was gone. The TV was off now. I left the cash on the counter and the key beside it. As I stepped outside, I heard something faint, like a hum, coming from my truck's radio even though it was turned off. A deep, low tone, almost like a voice too quiet to catch. I chalked it up to interference. The middle of nowhere does weird things to AM signals. I started driving. The road was empty, the asphalt cracked and pale in the headlights. A road sign flashed by, mile 21, then mile 22. I slowed down a little, remembering what the old man said. "Don't go past mile 23 before sunrise." It was stupid, I knew, but the desert plays tricks on you. There's something about that much nothing that makes your mind start listening for things that aren't there. Then the hum from the radio grew louder. I turned the knob off again, but it stayed. Not music, not static. A voice, low and slow, like someone whispering through water. My own name, I swear to God. Daniel, stop the truck. I gripped the wheel tighter and told myself I was imagining it. Long hours, no sleep, the wind playing tricks. Then came the next sign. Mile 23. Every part of me wanted to just keep driving, to prove the old man wrong, to prove that I wasn't scared. But then the engine sputtered once, twice, and then the headlights dimmed. The truck slowed to a crawl no matter how hard I pressed the pedal. I coasted onto the shoulder and killed the ignition. The desert was silent. No wind now, no bugs, no sound. Just blackness pressing against the cab. When I opened the door, the air was cold. Not cool, cold like winter. My breath fogged. I stepped out and noticed something strange. The asphalt under my boots looked wet like it had rained, but the air was bone dry. I leaned down. The dark patch wasn't water. It was oil, thick, fresh, glistening in the headlights. It stretched down the highway in a perfect line like something had been dragged. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, dragging steps coming from behind the truck. I spun around, heart pounding, expecting to see someone, maybe a hitchhiker, maybe that old man. But there was no one. The sound kept coming, though, closer, and when I shined my flashlight, I saw them. Footprints forming one by one in the oil, leading toward me. Bare feet, each print shining black under the light. I stumbled backward into the truck, slammed the door, and locked it. The footprints stopped just outside the driver's window. I couldn't see anything, but the radio came alive again, even though it was unplugged. The same voice, calm and slow. You shouldn't have passed mile 23. The truck's headlights flickered. Once, twice, and in that split second of light I saw something standing in the road about 30 feet ahead. A figure, tall and thin, its head tilted, skin reflecting like the oil on the ground. When the light went dark again, it was gone. I don't remember turning the key. I don't remember the engine catching. I just remember driving like hell back toward the station. The radio screamed with static the whole way, a dozen voices all whispering over each other until the lights of the station finally appeared. But when I pulled up, the building was gone. Just a slab of cracked concrete and weeds and a rusted sign swinging in the wind. The pumps were nothing but metal husks. No lights, no old man, no life. I sat there until dawn, shaking, waiting for the sun to rise. When it did, the desert looked normal again. Empty, bright, and endless. I drove home and told myself I'd fallen asleep at the wheel, dreamed the whole thing. But 2 days later, I took my truck to the shop in Abilene. The mechanic called me out back and asked what the hell I'd hit. There were streaks of black under the frame. Not oil, he said, not tar. He couldn't clean it off. It just soaked into the metal. That was 20 years ago, and I've never driven that road again. But sometimes when I'm up late, I hear the radio in the garage switch on by itself. The same low hum, the same voice, soft and steady. Daniel, don't go past mile 23. My name is Travis Elmore, and I'm from Canyon, Texas. I've been with the Randall County Sheriff's Department for 13 years now, and until last fall, I would have told you I'd seen just about everything a man could see on the highways of the Panhandle. But there are some things you can't explain. Some things that won't fit in a report no matter how you try to word them. What happened out on mile marker 66 still keeps me up nights. And every time I drive that stretch of Highway 66, I feel the same cold knot in my stomach. Like the road's watching me back. That part of 66 is nothing much to look at. 2 lanes, no shoulder, wind-whipped plains rolling out in every direction. The old motels and diners along it have been dead for decades, their signs broken and half swallowed by mesquite. You can see the ghost of a bus stop, a leaning mailbox, and sometimes the husk of an old car left to rust out in the grass. It's the kind of place you drive through fast, windows up, radio low. But for me, it was part of the job. About 2 years ago, we started getting calls, some strange ones. Late-night reports of accidents near mile marker 66. Folks driving through said they saw headlights twisted in a ditch, or a car burning, or someone standing in the middle of the highway waving for help. But when deputies got there, me most times, there was nothing. No car, no smoke, no skid marks, nothing. We chalked it up to drunks or folks half asleep seeing heat mirages. That was the easiest way to file it and move on. But it kept happening. Always the same spot. Always between 1 and 2 a.m. I remember the first night I started to get uneasy about it. It was early October. Cool air, a fat moon, and the kind of stillness you only get out there on the plains. Dispatch called in another report. A single vehicle crash near mile marker 66, possible fire. No response from the driver. I rolled my eyes, told dispatch I'd check it out. It was my beat after all. As I pulled closer, I saw what looked like smoke hanging over the road. My headlights caught something. A flash of metal, the shape of a sedan twisted at an angle. I remember the relief of thinking, finally, something real. But when I stepped out, the smoke just wasn't. It was gone, like it had never been there. The road was clean and cold. I walked both sides of the ditch with my flashlight, boots crunching over gravel. Nothing. Then I heard it. A faint sound, like tires squealing far off down the road. Then a thud. My heart jumped. I thought maybe another driver had come up behind me, didn't see me, and hit something. I ran back to the cruiser, checked the radio. No one else on the road, dispatch said. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty stretch of highway. The red glow of my taillights bleeding over the asphalt. Eventually, I turned around and went home. But I couldn't shake the sound. The next week, same thing. Another call. Another nothing. But this time the caller left a name, Earl Jennings. He said he was a trucker. Saw a patrol car flipped in the ditch with the light still flashing. Said he thought the deputy might be dead. When I heard that, I laughed. Half nervous, half irritated. I was the only one on shift near 66 that night. I drove out again. Mile marker 66 looked just like always. The dry grass waved, the highway hummed. But when I pulled up, my radio started crackling like it was picking up someone else's frequency. I leaned closer and heard something that made my skin crawl. My own voice. It wasn't clear, more like static and fragments, but I knew the tone, the rhythm. It was me. Saying something like, "Dispatch, I've got a 1050 at mile 66. Possible fatal." The exact words I'd said a week earlier. I sat there frozen, my hand hovering over the mic. Then I saw it. Down in the ditch in lights, red and blue flashing weakly through the weeds. I stepped out slow, hand on my gun, and started down the slope. The grass was cold and wet, the air heavy with that coppery smell of burned rubber. And there it was, a patrol car, mine. Same make, same model, same county decals. The passenger side was crushed in, windshield spidered, roof half caved. The front bumper was stamped into the dirt where it had hit. My flashlight swept across the number on the rear quarter panel, 1278. My number. For a second I thought maybe someone was screwing with me. Maybe the county had retired an old car with my number still on it. But when I walked closer, I saw my jacket on the driver's seat. The one with the rip in the sleeve. The radio inside hissed. I leaned in and saw a clipboard on the dash, a crash report half filled out. The name on it was mine. The time listed 1:47 a.m. The date, tomorrow. I don't remember running, but I know I did. I got back to my cruiser, slammed the door, and drove like hell until I hit the highway that led back to town. When I looked in the rearview mirror, the ditch was empty again. No lights, no wreck, no nothing. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? I said I'd checked the call, found nothing, no sign of an accident. I told myself maybe it was fatigue, the long hours. But that night kept replaying in my head. My voice on the radio, the report, the smell. 2 nights later, the dispatcher called again. Same report. This time another deputy, Cruz, went out instead. He called in about 10 minutes later, said the road was clear, no sign of trouble. Then nothing. His body was found the next morning about a mile down from mile marker 66. Car flipped, engine still running. Official report said he'd fallen asleep at the wheel. But I saw his face at the morgue. Eyes wide open, mouth frozen mid-scream. I went back out one last time after that. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought I could make sense of it, face it. I parked near the mile marker, cut the engine, and waited. The air felt thick, electric. The clock on the dash said 1:46 a.m. Then my radio clicked. A single burst of static. "Dispatch," my voice said. "I've got a 1050 at mile 66. Possible fatal." I reached for the mic, my hand shaking. "This is Elmore," I said. "I'm clear. There's no accident." But the voice kept talking. My voice. Driver unresponsive. Looks like me, I looked up. Headlights flashed in the ditch ahead. And there I was, and stepping out of the cruiser, same uniform, same flashlight in hand. Watching myself, I remember thinking, if I turn away, maybe it'll stop. Maybe it'll vanish like before. But I couldn't move. Then everything went white. When I woke up, it was morning. My car was parked on the side of the highway, engine dead. The clock read 1:47 a.m., stuck there, frozen. I drove back to town in silence, sunlight burning through the windshield, and handed in my badge that afternoon. The department said I was having a breakdown. Maybe they're right, but I've never driven that stretch again, and I tell everyone who asks to stay off Highway 66 after dark, because whatever's out there, it doesn't crash you. It replaces you. My name is Daniel Reyes, and I'm from Lubbock, Texas. Back in 2011, I was working the night shift at a little roadside motel called the High Plains Inn, just off Highway 84. It sat in that dead stretch of road between Lubbock and Post, surrounded by miles of flat nothing. A faded neon sign buzzed out front, half the letters burned out so it just said HGH Plus. It was the kind of place you stopped at if your car was overheating or if you were too tired to make it to the city. Cheap rooms, stale coffee, the faint smell of bleach and cigarettes that clung to everything. I didn't mind it, really. I was 28, broke, and trying to save up to go back to school. The motel was quiet most nights. A few truckers, a couple of families on their way to Austin or Dallas. The owner, a man named Rick, trusted me enough to leave me alone during the late shift. My only company was the hum of the Coke machine and the occasional knock from the desert wind against the glass door. The motel had 20 rooms numbered 1 through 20, but only 19 were ever rented out. Room 19 stayed locked, always had, according to Rick. He told me it was under renovation, but I'd been there for 8 months and never saw a single tool or painter's bucket go near it. The curtains were always drawn, and the door had this old brass knob that looked different from the others, like it had come from another time. Guests would sometimes ask about it, mostly kids or couples looking for a story. They'd point and laugh, saying it looked haunted. I'd just shrug. But every now and then someone would get this serious look and say, "You ever hear knocking from in there?" The first time I heard it, it was around 2 in the morning on a Sunday. The parking lot was empty except for my old Chevy and a semi parked by the edge of the lot. I was reading behind the counter when I heard it. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate, from somewhere down the hall. It wasn't loud, but it carried in that empty building. I stepped out into the hallway. The carpet was that ugly red and brown pattern that never looked clean. The fluorescent lights hummed above me, flickering just a bit. And there it was again, knock, knock, knock. Coming from room 19, I stood there listening. My first thought was that some idiot had broken in. Maybe a drifter looking for a place to sleep. But when I pressed my ear to the door, it was quiet inside. No movement, no breathing, just this faint sound, like someone dragging a hand down the inside of the door. I used my key ring to check the handle, but it was locked, tight. The metal was cold, colder than the rest of the hallway. I said, "Hello? You all right in there?" Nothing, just silence. I waited a minute more before walking back to the front desk. I told myself it was pipes or the wind or maybe the room next door. But the next night it happened again. Around the same time, 3 knocks. Always 3. I told Rick about it the following morning. He laughed, said I'd been working too many graveyard shifts. Then he got quiet for a second and said, "Just don't open that door. Let it be." That made me uneasy. Rick wasn't a superstitious man. He'd done a few years in the oil fields and didn't scare easy. But the way he said it, like a warning, stuck with me. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing other things. Guests in rooms 17 and 18 would complain about hearing tapping during the night. One woman said it sounded like someone knocking from inside the walls. A trucker told me his TV turned on by itself at 2:15 a.m., showing only static. He moved to another motel the next morning. Then, one night in late March, something changed. The motel was half full and a storm was rolling through. The wind howled across the plains, rattling the window panes. Around 1:45, I saw movement on the hallway camera. Just a flicker, like someone walking past room 19. I rewound the tape, but there was nothing. No one there. I decided to check it out. I grabbed the flashlight from the desk and walked down the hall. The storm outside made everything creak and groan. When I reached room 19, the air felt heavier somehow. I shined my light at the door and I swear I saw the knob twitch just slightly, like someone was turning it from the inside. Then came the knocking. 3 times. But this time, it was followed by a voice, a woman's voice, muffled and shaking. "Please," she said. "It's cold." I froze. My heart was slamming in my chest. I said, "Who's in there?" No answer. Just the sound of something shifting on the other side. Maybe the bed springs, maybe footsteps. I ran back to the office and called Rick. It was nearly 2 a.m., but he picked up on the first ring. I told him what I'd heard. There was a long silence. Then he said, "Stay out of there, Daniel. I'm on my way." He got to the motel around 2:30 wearing a raincoat and carrying a ring of keys. His face looked pale, older somehow. He didn't say a word as he walked down the hall. I followed, trying to keep up. When we reached the door, he hesitated. Then he said, "I guess it's time." He slid the key into the lock. The metal squealed like it hadn't been turned in years. The door creaked open just a few inches. The smell hit us first. Something sweet and rotten like flowers left in a closed-up room for too long. Rick pushed it open all the way and stepped inside. I followed him, holding the flashlight. The room was untouched. Bed neatly made, TV unplugged, curtains drawn tight. But the air was warm. Unnaturally warm, like someone had just been lying there. The indentation on the bedspread was fresh, shaped like a person's body. Rick walked over to the nightstand and picked up something, a faded Polaroid photo. He stared at it for a long time before slipping it into his pocket. I asked him what it was, but he just said, "She used to stay here. Before I bought the place, and then we both heard it. From the closet, 3 soft knocks." Rick turned toward it slowly. His hand trembled as he reached for the handle. When he opened it, the smell got stronger. Inside was an old maid's cart, dusty and half collapsed. And behind it, pressed against the wall, was something dark and brittle, human-shaped. I only saw it for a second before Rick slammed the door shut. He grabbed my arm and said, "Forget what you saw. Don't tell anyone. Room stays locked." The next morning he fired me, paid me 2 weeks severance and told me to leave town. I tried to move on, but I couldn't. I kept thinking about that warmth, the photo, the voice. Last month I drove back out that way, just to see if the motel was still there. The sign was gone, the windows boarded up. But when I parked and got out of the car, I heard it, faint and steady through the wind. 3 knocks, coming from behind the door of room 19. My name is Travis Ledoux, and I'm from Tyler, Texas. I've been driving trucks since I was 20, mostly runs between Dallas and El Paso, sometimes further if the money's good. Long hauls don't bother me, never did. But I'll tell you something that still crawls under my skin when I think about it, even now. It happened about 6 years ago, out on I-20, somewhere between Abilene and Midland. There's a 24-hour diner off the highway there, one of those old ones with peeling neon and gravel parking lots that crunch under your boots. The sign used to say Martha's Truck Stop and Grill, though most folks just called it Martha's Lights. I didn't know why they called it that until the night I stopped there. It was just past midnight, dead of summer. Heat pressing against the windshield even with the AC going full blast. I'd been on the road since dawn, hauling a refrigerated load of beef headed for Odessa. I remember the smell of diesel and sweat, my eyes burning from too much coffee and not enough sleep. When I saw the diner lights glowing up ahead through the dark, yellow and buzzing, I figured I'd stop for a burger and a few hours rest. There were already 3 rigs parked out front, their engines idling low like distant thunder. Inside, it was the usual kind of place. Smelled like fried food and bleach. Old country songs whispering from a jukebox nobody ever touched. The waitress was an older woman with gray curls piled on her head and a name tag that said Lou. She poured my coffee before I even asked, like she'd been expecting me. "You running late tonight, hun?" she asked. "Always am," I said, trying to shake the road out of my bones. "Gonna grab something to eat and stretch my legs a bit." She nodded but didn't smile. "Don't linger too long out there. Those lights get to acting strange this time of night." I chuckled, figuring she meant the flickering bulbs in the parking lot. "Strange how?" She poured herself a cup and leaned on the counter. "Ask any of the drivers. They'll tell you. Those floodlights in the lot, they blink in patterns. Morse code, some say. Always different, except sometimes they spell names. Names. Truckers' names," she said. Couple fellas swore the lights spelled theirs clear as day. One of them, a boy out of Amarillo, said it told him to turn back. He didn't. Wrecked his rig 15 miles up the road. I laughed it off, told her I didn't believe in ghost stories. But I'll admit, something about the way she said it, quiet, like she was afraid the lights might hear, made me uneasy. I ate my burger, paid my bill, and stepped outside. The night was heavy, air buzzing with cicadas. The lot stretched wide under 4 tall floodlights, all humming softly. I stood there smoking, letting my eyes adjust. Then one of the lights blinked. Once, twice, pause. Then again, short, long, short, long. It wasn't random. It was too deliberate. I tried to laugh it off, muttered to myself that it was just bad wiring. But then another light joined in across the lot. Together they pulsed like some invisible hand was tapping a code across the asphalt. I'd been in the army before I started driving trucks. Knew a little Morse, enough to catch letters when they came slow. I squinted through the dark, following the rhythm. TRAVIS, I froze. My cigarette slipped from my fingers and hissed out in the gravel. The next word came slower, GOBACK. My skin went cold. I turned, looking toward the diner window, but Lou wasn't there anymore. The lights stopped blinking and hummed steady again, casting their pale yellow cones over the empty lot. I told myself I was overtired, hallucinating. I'd been driving too long, staring at headlights for hours. I got in my truck, locked the door, and sat there with the engine running. Heart hammering so loud I could hear it over the idling diesel. About 10 minutes later, another driver came out, a big man with a gut, wearing a red cap that said Shiloh Freight. He saw me sitting there and gave me a wave before climbing into his own rig. As soon as his engine kicked over, the lights started blinking again. This time I just watched. The pattern was different, faster, but I swear it spelled something again. Letters I couldn't quite make out, like a stutter in the dark. The man pulled out of the lot, tail lights shrinking into the highway. The lights went dead for half a second, completely off, and when they came back, one of them flickered red for just a moment. Like blood? I wanted to leave then, but something in me said to wait. Maybe curiosity, maybe fear. I waited 20 minutes before I finally pulled out. The highway was empty. Just the sound of the tires whining and the dark pressing close. 10 miles down, I saw flashing lights. Blue and red this time, real ones. A sheriff's cruiser and an ambulance angled across the road. I slowed down, rolled my window down when the deputy waved me over. "Jackknife," he said, voice flat. "Driver must have fallen asleep or something." Caught the guardrail and flipped her clean over. The truck was on its side in the ditch, the trailer torn open like a can, and there, scattered across the asphalt, were pieces of what used to be Shiloh Freight. I saw the red cap lying in the dirt. The deputy told me to go around, that the cleanup would take hours. I nodded and eased back onto the highway, my hands trembling so bad I could barely grip the wheel. I didn't say a word until I reached Odessa. I kept driving past Martha's for years after that, but I never stopped again. Still, sometimes on clear nights when I'm heading west, I catch a glimpse of those lights out there across the desert. 4 of them, pulsing faintly through the dark. And I swear, when they blink, it's never random. A month ago, I saw them again. I was running a late load near Midland, just like before. The lights flashed in the distance, so faint I thought maybe it was lightning. Then, clear as day, I saw the pattern. Short, long, over and over. I pulled over to the shoulder, heart pounding. The message was slower this time, careful, deliberate. TRAVIS. Then nothing. Just a long pause. Then one last word. STAY. I sat there in the dark, engine humming, headlights cutting through the dust. I thought about Lou, about that driver with the red cap, about how nobody ever talked about Martha's anymore. When I finally looked up again, the lights were steady, innocent, just buzzing against the black sky. But I haven't left town since. Haven't taken another haul. I don't sleep much either, because when I close my eyes, I see them. The lights blinking through the dark, waiting for me to move. My name is Daniel Rhodes, and I'm from Waco, Texas. I drive for a living. Logistics mostly, meaning I spend half my life somewhere between nowhere and the next gas station. I like it that way. I like the hum of the road, the way the world feels stretched out and empty after midnight, like the whole country's asleep except for me. But one night, back in early March, I took a wrong turn off Highway 84 that led me somewhere I still can't explain. A place that, according to every map, never existed. A place called Meriden. I'd been hauling a partial load from Waco up toward Abilene. My GPS showed construction ahead, so it rerouted me through a secondary road that wound west. Through scrubland and farmland and those endless, flat stretches dotted with rusted silos and churches that looked abandoned even when they weren't. The air that night had that kind of eerie stillness that only comes before a storm, the wind pausing as if it were waiting to listen. I followed the detour without thinking too much. tapping my steering wheel to some classic rock station until the signal faded into static. After about 30 minutes, I saw the sign. A white wooden board, reflective paint peeling off, nailed to 2 crooked posts. Meriden, Pop, 421. The name didn't ring a bell. I've driven every county road in central Texas, but I'd never heard of a Meriden. Still, I figured maybe it was one of those little towns that died after the railroad pulled out decades ago. The road narrowed and the headlights picked up clusters of houses. Modest, single-story places with wide porches and soft yellow lights glowing in the windows. It looked old but not abandoned. There was a diner, a small hardware store, and even a gas station with an old Gulf sign out front. I rolled into town, relieved to see the station lights on. My tank was running low and I figured I could use some coffee before pushing on to Abilene. The attendant was an older man with a weathered face, wearing a gray cap that said Meriden Fuel and Supply. He looked up as I pulled in and gave me a polite wave. I stepped out and asked if the pumps were self-serve. He laughed softly, said, "Ain't much of anything self-serve in Meriden, son. I'll top you off." His accent was thick, his voice friendly but strange somehow, like someone imitating a friendliness he'd memorized. I watched him fill the tank, and when I mentioned I'd never heard of Meriden, he smiled but didn't answer. Just said, "You must have taken the long way tonight." I went inside to pay, where a young woman behind the counter was reading a paperback romance. She looked up and smiled, and wide, bright, and perfectly normal. "Y'all just passing through?" she asked. I nodded. "You should get a room over at the inn. Weather's turning bad. Roads'll wash out by morning." I thanked her but said I'd rather keep driving. She just shrugged and said, "Suit yourself, hun. Folks don't usually leave after dark." That line stayed with me. I laughed it off as small-town talk, but as I got back in the truck, I noticed something. No insects, no sound. Even in Texas in March, you can count on the buzz of crickets or the croak of frogs somewhere. But in Meriden, there was nothing. Just that still, waiting silence. I decided to take her advice and find a motel. The Meriden Inn sat on the far edge of town, near a row of pecan trees. It was a 2-story building, pale blue with a flickering neon sign that hummed faintly in the dark. The lobby was warm, almost too warm, and smelled faintly of lemons and dust. The man at the front desk was clean-cut, wearing a white shirt buttoned to the neck. "Room for one?" he asked, voice calm and formal, like he was reading a script. I nodded. He handed me a key, a real metal one, not a card, and said, "Breakfast starts at 6. Checkouts whenever you wake." My room looked like something from the 1970s. Beige carpet, floral curtains, old box TV on a stand. But the sheets were clean, and after 12 hours of driving, I didn't care. I showered, laid down, and must have fallen asleep instantly. At some point in the night, I woke up. No reason. Just that uneasy feeling when you're not sure what's wrong yet. The room was pitch black, except for the faint red glow of the alarm clock. It read 3:12 a.m., then I heard it, a soft knock. 3 times, slow, deliberate. It came from the hallway. I froze, listening. Another set of knocks. This time from the wall behind the headboard, like someone gently tapping from the other side. I got up, heart hammering, and looked through the peephole. Nothing. The hallway was empty. I flicked on the lights, checked the window, the closet, even under the bed. Nothing. I told myself it was pipes, maybe old heating. Still, I barely slept after that. In the morning, the town seemed perfectly normal again. Bright sunlight, a few people walking dogs, a mail truck idling at the curb. Downstairs, the inn's breakfast room was filled with quiet conversation. Older couples, a few families, and the same woman from the gas station, chatting with someone I hadn't seen before. Everyone smiled politely when I came in. Too politely. I sat down with coffee, pretending to check my phone. No service. I tried GPS. The little blue dot showed me sitting in a blank green field, no roads, no towns, nothing. Just the word Texas. I asked the man at the desk if they had Wi-Fi, and he chuckled. "No need for that nonsense here. You're safe." He said it kindly, but the word safe stuck in my throat like a thorn. I left soon after, trying to shake the feeling. The moment I passed the town limits, my phone buzzed back to life. GPS snapped into place, showing me back on County Road 213, but when I looked for Meriden, it was gone. The road between where I'd entered and where I exited was just empty land. No side streets, no buildings, no town. I stopped at a diner in Brownwood an hour later, ordered breakfast, and asked the waitress if she'd ever heard of Meriden. She gave me a look like I was making fun of her. Ain't no Meriden around here, hon. Closest thing sounds like Meridian, but that's 50 miles east. I showed her my receipt from the gas station, the one that said Meriden Fuel and Supply across the top. She squinted at it. That's strange.
Looks old, real old.
You keeping that as a souvenir? I laughed nervously, folded it back into my wallet, and told her it must have been some old name for a town that had changed over the years. But later, when I checked online, there was no record of any Meriden in Texas. Not current, not historical. Nothing. That night, back at home, I pulled the receipt out again. The ink had faded a little, but the date still showed March 3rd, 2023. Underneath the printed line for fuel sale, someone had written something in pencil. I hadn't noticed it before. It said, "Don't come back after dark, I don't drive west anymore. I stick to the interstates even if it takes me longer. But every once in a while, late at night, when the sky's empty and the GPS glitches for a second, I'll see it flicker. That same white sign, for just an instant, on the side of the road. Meriden, Pop 421, and every time I keep driving." My name is Caleb Minter, and I'm from Fort Stockton, Texas. It's a lonely stretch of desert between Fort Stockton and El Paso, about 200 miles of wind-scarred asphalt and sun-bleached bones. Anyone who's driven it knows the kind of quiet I'm talking about, the kind that doesn't feel empty but watchful. My wife Jenna and I used to make that drive twice a year, heading to El Paso to visit her folks. We'd leave early in the morning and try to beat the heat, but last August we left late, around sunset. The air was still thick and hot, even after the sun dipped low, painting the desert in bruised colors. We were about 70 miles east of El Paso when we first saw the billboard. It stood alone off the right shoulder, unlit, rising out of the dark like a sentinel. The headlights caught it for just long enough for us to read the words in white paint. "Turn around." Jenna laughed. "That's creepy as hell," she said, rolling down her window a little. The desert wind smelled dry and metallic like rust and dust. "You think it's some kind of prank?" "Probably," I said, though I slowed down anyway. "One of those viral marketing things. They do weird stuff out here." She didn't answer, just stared back at it as it vanished in the rear view. We drove another few miles and I realized I couldn't shake it from my head. Something about how fresh the paint looked, like someone had been up there that same day. Out here, billboards usually advertise truck stops or bail bonds, not vague threats. Then the radio cut out, static, then silence. I fiddled with the dial, trying to bring back the old country station, but nothing came through. Not even the usual hiss of AM, just dead air. "You losing signal?" Jenna asked. "Guess so." She turned in her seat to check her phone. No service either, weird, I had bars a minute ago. We kept driving. The moon was full enough to cast silver over the highway, but the desert beyond was pitch black. No lights, no movement. Even the horizon looked swallowed. About 15 minutes later, we saw another billboard. This one stood on the left side of the road. I only caught it for a second before it passed, but I saw the same white paint, the same neat block letters. "Turn around," Jenna sat up straight. "Did you see that?" "Yeah," I said. My stomach tightened. "That's the same sign. Could be another one." "Caleb, it's on the other side of the road. Same handwriting, same everything." I slowed down to about 40. The road stretched ahead. No turns, no exits, just the long black ribbon cutting through nothing. Then up ahead, something glimmered. A third billboard. I eased off the gas. This one had fresh paint, streaks still visible in the glare. The letters were smeared, like someone had written them with their bare hands. But it didn't say "turn around," it said "too late." Jenna gasped. "Okay, that's enough. We're turning around." "I don't... Caleb." Her voice broke a little. "Please," I nodded. There was a wide shoulder just ahead, so I slowed to a stop and swung the car around. My headlights swept across the desert, catching dry brush and a single road sign bent at an angle. We drove back the way we came. For a while, neither of us said anything. The silence was thick, heavier than before. It wasn't just the quiet of being alone in the desert. It was the kind that feels like something's listening. After 10 minutes, Jenna whispered, "Do you think someone's out here messing with us?" "I don't know." Then we passed the same "too late" billboard again. She squeezed my arm. "We're going the wrong way." "No, we're not," I said, even though my voice shook. We turned around. "That's impossible." But there it was, unmistakable. The same streaks of paint, the same uneven T. I pressed the gas harder. The engine roared, but the road didn't seem to change. Every few miles, another billboard loomed out of the dark. Sometimes it said, "Turn around," sometimes "Too late." Always those two phrases alternating, mocking. At some point, the gas gauge started dropping faster than it should have. The needle sank toward empty even though I'd filled up in Fort Stockton. I slowed down to conserve fuel, but the car began to sputter. We stopped in the middle of the highway. The air outside was still too still. No insects, no wind, not even the usual hum of power lines. Just the faint ticking of the cooling engine. Jenna started crying softly. "Caleb, I want to go home." "I know, baby." Then I saw something in the mirror. At first I thought it was the moonlight catching on something metallic. But as I leaned closer, I realized it was a shape. A figure standing in the middle of the road about 50 yards back. Too tall, too thin. I turned to look out the back window, but it was gone. "Did you see that?" I asked. "What?" "There was someone—" A loud crack cut me off. The sound of wood splitting. Ahead of us, another billboard rose from the ground. No poles, no base, just erupting from the asphalt, blocking the road. The headlights caught its message. "Too late." Jenna screamed. I threw the car in reverse, tires screeching. We spun, gravel flying, and I floored it the other way. But no matter how far I drove, the scenery didn't change. The same mile markers, the same curve in the road, the same black rock shaped like a crooked finger jutting from the dirt. It was like the desert was looping around us. And then the car died. The headlights flickered, then went dark. The dashboard lights faded one by one until the only illumination was the pale wash of the moon. Jenna was shaking. "We need to run. There's a town, there has to be." I opened the door, but the air that hit me felt wrong. Too cold, like winter air, even though it had been 90 degrees less than an hour ago. My breath fogged when I exhaled. Then came the whisper. At first I thought it was Jenna, but it came from everywhere, from the sand, the wind, the hollow space beneath the car. 100 voices all whispering in unison. "Turn around. Turn around. Turn around." Jenna clutched my arm. "Caleb, we have to go." We started walking down the highway, hand in hand. After a while we saw headlights, faint, far away. Relief flooded me. I waved, shouted, ran toward them. But when they got close enough, I saw the vehicle wasn't moving. The lights were still, floating in midair like eyes. Then they blinked out. We ran. I don't know how long, an hour, maybe more. Every few minutes a billboard appeared ahead of us, always the same message. "Too late." The last one was smaller, closer to the ground, as if someone had dragged it there by hand. And that's when I found the car again. Our car, parked exactly where we'd left it. Engine cold, doors wide open. The keys still in the ignition. Jenna's hand slipped out of mine. When I turned to look at her, she wasn't there. Just the empty road stretching in both directions. I screamed her name until my throat bled. But only the wind answered, carrying that same soft chant. "Turn around." I don't remember getting back in the car or falling asleep, or waking up when the sun came up. But when I did, everything looked normal. The gas gauge was full again. The radio worked. There were no billboards. I drove to El Paso in silence. When I got to Jenna's parents' house, her mother opened the door, smiling at first, until she saw me standing alone. "Where's Jenna?" she asked. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. Because when I looked down at my hands, I saw faint white smears, dried paint, and realized they smelled like turpentine. And in the reflection of the car window behind her, for just a second, I thought I saw a billboard. It said, "Turn around." My name is Daniel McCrae, and I'm from Lufkin, Texas. I've lived here all my life, born and raised under the tall pines, the smell of sap and soil, the hum of cicadas thick as heat in the air. Folks who don't know East Texas think of it as peaceful, quiet. But I've learned that quiet can hold its breath too long, and when it does, something's waiting in it. I work maintenance for the county, mostly keeping rural roads clear of fallen limbs, storm debris, and the occasional unlucky deer. Nights are long out here, and the woods never sleep. There's a stretch of Highway 94 that cuts through a stand of pines so dense the moon can't find its way through. We call it the Iron Mile because the trees close in like a tunnel, their trunks black and hard as metal in the headlights. That's where it started. It was early December, cold enough for my breath to fog the windshield, and I was driving home after a long shift. My truck's dash cam had been acting up. Static lines across the playback, but I kept it on anyway. Habit. As I rounded the bend past mile marker 27, I saw him. A man stood under a broken streetlight, one of those old yellow sodium bulbs that flicker before they die. He was waving, not frantically, not like someone in trouble, just standing there, arm raised at shoulder height, hand moving side to side, slow and steady. He wore a long coat, something gray that seemed to swallow the light around him. I remember thinking he looked too still, like a mannequin someone had forgotten by the road. I didn't stop. Out here, you don't pick up hitchhikers after dark. Everyone knows that. But I felt a twinge of guilt as I passed, watching his shape fall behind me in the mirror until the dark took him. The next morning, the sheriff's office put out a notice. Multiple calls about a man trying to flag down cars on 94. They'd gone to check and found nothing. I told myself it was nothing unusual. Maybe some drifter. Maybe a prank. But that night, driving home again, he was there. Same spot, same streetlight, same wave. This time I slowed. Something about the way he stood, it didn't look right. His head tilted at an angle that made my neck ache just looking at it. And when my headlights hit him, I saw his face was gray, the kind of gray that doesn't belong to skin or shadow. His eyes were dark holes, empty. I swear he smiled when I passed, though I couldn't see teeth, just the crease of lips that didn't move with the rest of him. When I got home, I checked the dash cam footage. He wasn't there. The light was broken, just like before, but no figure, no movement. Just the empty shoulder and the swaying branches. By the third night, word had spread. People said the Iron Mile man was a ghost, a trick of headlights, a warning. Some truckers claimed they saw him closer each time they passed. One said he felt something hit his cab. But when he stopped, there was nothing, no dent, no blood, no footprints. I laughed at the talk, but not for long. The fourth night, he'd moved. He wasn't under the light anymore. He was 10 feet closer to the road, right at the edge of the asphalt, arm raised. I felt the air change when I saw him, thicker, colder. My radio cut to static, and the smell of something rotten seeped through the vents like wet leaves left too long to mold. I drove faster, eyes locked on the yellow lines, heart hammering like a piston. When I pulled into my driveway, I checked the dash cam again. Same as before, no man, no movement. But my headlights flickered on the screen, and for just a second before the static, I saw something pressed up against the glass. A face, gray and blurred, mouth open too wide. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps on gravel. I thought about calling the sheriff, but what would I say? That I'd seen a ghost that cameras couldn't catch? On the fifth night, I told myself I'd take the long way home. But the Iron Mile has a way of pulling you back. Maybe it's the shortest route, maybe it's something else, but I found myself turning onto it before I realized. My headlights cut through the fog, and there he was again. Only this time, he was in the middle of the road. I slammed the brakes, tires screaming on the damp asphalt. The truck stopped inches from him. He didn't flinch, just stared. His face looked clearer now, like he was closer to being real. His eyes weren't empty this time, they were wet, glistening black like oil or blood. His mouth moved slow and silent, but I heard the words inside my skull. "Don't leave me." That's when he lifted his hand, not to wave, but to point. Directly at me. The cab lights flickered, the engine coughed, and for a heartbeat the world went still. When the lights came back, he was gone. Only the mist, the trees, and my own shaking breath remained. I drove home in silence. When I parked, I noticed something dark on the hood. I thought it was oil at first, but when I touched it, it smeared red. Blood. Still warm. I didn't go to work the next day. Or the day after. The sheriff's office said they'd gotten another call about the man. This time from someone who'd crashed after swerving to avoid him. They never found the driver. Just the car, headlights still on, doors open, empty. I thought that was the end of it, but the Iron Mile has a way of following you. A week later, I woke to my truck alarm blaring. I went outside barefoot in the frost, and there he was, standing beside my truck, hand raised in that same slow wave. Only this time he was close enough for me to see his mouth moving again. "Don't leave me." I don't remember unlocking the door or stepping forward. Just the smell of pine and rot, and the feeling of cold fingers brushing mine as I reached for the handle. Then nothing. They found my truck the next morning. Engine running. Headlights on, door open. The dash cam footage, what little they could recover, showed a figure standing on the shoulder of Highway 94, hand raised under the broken streetlight. As each car passed, he seemed a little closer to the lens. Until the last frame, the man wasn't waving anymore. He was sitting in the driver's seat. My name is Dale Hargrove, and I'm from Lufkin, Texas. I've been running the I-10 line for near 25 years, hauling everything from lumber to chicken feed, sleeping in the cab more nights than I've spent in any bed. You learn the rhythm of the road out here, the way the white lines slide under your headlights like veins of light, the way the CB chatter becomes the only voice keeping you from feeling like the last man alive on Earth. It was mid-October when this happened. That time of year when the sun's gone before supper and the air smells like the woods are dying. I was westbound out of Beaumont with a load of engine parts headed for El Paso, running light traffic, my radio humming low. Around 11, I caught the voice of my buddy Roy, call sign Dustpan, crackling through on Channel 19. Breaker 19, this here's Dustpan. Anyone out west on I-10, how's she looking up there past Junction? I thumbed my mic. She's clear, Roy, flat and lonely as ever. You out tonight too? 10-4. Just past Sealy. Got me a thermos full of mud and a pocket full of sunflower seeds. Gonna make Odessa before daylight. We talked a while, nothing serious. Just miles and weather and the kind of stupid jokes that keep you human after too many hours staring into dark asphalt. Then another familiar voice came in. Wayne goes by Longshot, running cattle out of Houston. The three of us had been talking for years on and off. Never met face to face, but I could have picked their voices out of a crowd. The night was easy, quiet. We traded stories about the worst truck stops, the sketchiest diners. Then somewhere past San Antonio, maybe around Comfort, a fourth voice cut in. Breaker 19, it said. Clear and low, male but flat like an AM broadcast from underground. How you boys holding up tonight? I figured it was just another driver looking for company. Not bad, Roy said. Who we got there? A pause, then. Just a friend. Been listening to y'all a while. The voice didn't have that road crackle, that bit of static that comes from skipping towers or bouncing off weather. It sounded too clean, like he was sitting in the cab beside me whispering into my ear. I said, where you at, friend? Right behind you, Dale. My hand froze on the mic. Say again? He repeated it, same even tone. Right behind you, Dale Hargrove out of Lufkin. You're running westbound at 73 miles an hour. Trailer light on the right side out. You ought to fix that before you get pulled. The cab went dead quiet. My mirrors showed nothing but the orange flicker of my own marker light stretching back into the dark. Roy laughed nervously over the radio. You got a buddy trailing you, Dale? I said, nope. The voice came again. Roy Thomas, born in '59, used to run short haul out of Port Arthur. You're pulling 40,000 pounds of beef and your back tires are bald as a preacher's head. Roy stopped laughing. Wayne cut in, his voice thin. All right, who the hell is this? Wayne Kelso, the voice said smoothly. You don't want to know who I am. You just want to keep both hands on the wheel, 'cause that front left brake line's ready to go. You'll find that out in about 40 miles near Ozona. It's quick, though. You won't feel a thing. The three of us just sat there breathing into our mics. The channel hissed softly, the kind of static that sounds like wind moving through dry grass. Roy tried to shake it off. You some kind of cop? You got cameras on us or what? No, the voice said. Not a cop. I just listen. Been listening a long time. You'd be surprised how many last words pass through this frequency. Folks don't even know they're saying them. I felt the sweat crawl under my collar. You got a name? Another pause, longer this time. You can call me Channel. Wayne swore under his breath. Channel my ass. You better back off before I find your rig and... The voice cut him off, sharper now. You won't. You'll be on the shoulder near Ozona in less than an hour. Fire in the cab. The cattle will scream before you do. Bullshit, Wayne spat. Ain't nothing wrong with my rig. But you could hear it, that thin edge in his voice, like he wasn't sure. We rode in silence a while. Every time my mic hissed, I thought I'd hear him again, that impossible voice. The miles rolled by. Empty exits, shuttered gas stations, long stretches of blacktop where even the stars looked afraid to shine. About 30 minutes later, Roy came on, voice low. You boys still there? Yeah, I said. I just lost Longshot. He ain't answering. I checked my watch. 1:27 a.m. I could feel the static in the air, that weight you get before a thunderstorm, but heavier somehow, like the night itself was holding its breath. Then the voice came back, softer, almost kind. Told you it'd be quick. Roy cussed, full panic now. Where the hell are you, you son of a bitch? Right where you'll be soon, dustpan. Right where the road ends. Roy's rig was about 30 miles east of me. I floored it, pushing 80, my eyes burning on the empty asphalt. Every few seconds, the radio hissed and popped, like the signal was breathing. Then I smelled it, smoke, not in the cab, but faint through the vents drifting on the cold air, and under it something else, a sweet rot like burned hide. When I hit the rest area near Sheffield, the whole sky to the west was orange. A semi had jackknifed off the road. Trailer split and burning, cattle carcasses black and twisted. They said later the driver was found slumped against the guardrail, still holding his mic. They never found Roy's truck. Just pieces, a door panel, some glass, his thermos smashed on the shoulder. I don't remember pulling over. I just remember the radio, still live, hissing softly, and then the voice again, close as breath. Guess it's just you now, Dale. Don't look in your mirrors. You won't like what's there. I threw the mic out the window, shut the radio off, and drove until the sun came up. Eastbound now, back the way I came. That was 12 years ago. I haven't used a CB since. But sometimes when the sky's low and the static rolls across the AM band, I hear it again, a whisper under the country songs. A name said softly. Mine. And once, not long ago, parked outside a diner near Sonora, I swear I heard a familiar voice on someone else's rig. Breaker 19, this here's channel. Anybody out tonight? I didn't stay for coffee. My name is Wade Clements and I'm from Midland, Texas. I used to be a maintenance man for the city, water lines, road crews, patch jobs, until the winter of '09 when I got laid off. Work dried up, bills stacked high, and I started doing odd jobs out along Highway 349. Folks called me reliable. I didn't think of myself as much of anything. Just someone who knew how to keep moving when things went bad. About 20 miles north of Midland, there's an old stretch of highway that bends off toward what used to be the Sandstone Motel. You won't find it on Google Maps anymore, not since the roof caved in and the county condemned it around 2002. The sign's still there, though a rusted frame of yellow steel, no lights left in the letters, just a half-broken arrow pointing east into the mesquite. I used to pass it every week going to a ranch job near Stanton, and one morning in February I noticed something different. The office door was open. It didn't make sense. The place had been shuttered for years, windows boarded, driveway eaten by weeds. But there it was, gaping wide, with a white paper tacked to the frame that fluttered in the cold wind. Curiosity'll do strange things to a man with time on his hands, and I had plenty of that. I pulled over, shut off the truck, and stepped out into the crunch of gravel. The air smelled like dust and mouse droppings. Somewhere far off, oil pumps moved their heads in slow, steady nods. Inside, the air was dry and still. There were coffee rings on the counter, faded flyers on the walls. A broken TV sat in the corner like a fossil. Behind the counter was a big leather ledger, the old kind, thick and cracked down the spine. The paper I'd seen on the door was a sheet torn from it, scrawled with a name and a date. February 12th, 2025, my own date. That morning, I stepped behind the counter, the boards creaking under my boots. The ledger was open wide, like someone had just been reading it. The handwriting inside wasn't old or faded. It looked fresh, the ink still shining faintly. There were names listed, 2, sometimes 3 on each page, each written in neat cursive beside a date. Every one of them had a check mark beside it. I flipped back through the years, the names piling up. At first, they didn't mean anything. But as I read, something stirred in my memory. Mark Kinsey, May 3rd, 2012. That name hit me. I remembered seeing it on the news. He'd gone missing from Odessa, never found. I turned another page. Sharon Talbot, September 8th, 2016, another one. I remembered her too. She'd worked at the gas station by Loop 250, disappeared after closing. My hand started shaking. Every name I recognized came with a memory. A missing person from around Midland, Odessa, Big Spring. 2 decades of them, 50, maybe 60 names. Some had been in the papers. Others were just small-town whispers. But they were all here, written in the same looping cursive. And then I turned to the last page. The ink was fresh. The name at the bottom was Wade Clements and February 12th, 2025. My breath went out of me. I stood there staring at it, the smell of old paper thick in my nose. I felt this cold bloom spreading through my chest, like my body understood something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. At first, I thought someone was playing a joke. Maybe one of the ranch hands or some bored teenagers who'd broken in. But when I looked closer, I saw that every name, even the ones from 20 years back, were written by the same hand. Same tilt, same way of curling the capital letters. That's when I noticed the door behind the counter. It was half open, leading into the manager's office. I pushed it gently and it creaked like a scream. The room smelled like mildew and something sharp like pennies and rot. There was a rotary phone on the desk, a calendar from 1998 still hanging on the wall, and a small mirror with a hairline crack running through it. Then I saw the note taped under the mirror. A square of paper, yellowed and curling at the corners. On it, written in the same hand as the ledger, were the words, "Check in, never check out." I backed away. My boots knocked over a stack of papers, and as I bent to pick them up, I realized they weren't papers at all. They were old driver's licenses. Dozens of them scattered like fallen leaves. Every one of them matched a name I'd seen in the book. I ran. Out the door, across the lot, gravel spraying under my boots. I didn't stop until I reached my truck, gasping. I slammed the door, turned the key, nothing, dead. The battery had been fine that morning, but now it clicked uselessly. I looked up and the motel lights, the ones I thought were long dead, flickered on. Room 6 glowed red. The door opened slowly and a figure stepped out. A tall man in a dark suit, his face pale as paper. He didn't walk toward me, just stood there watching. When the wind shifted, I could smell something faintly sweet like cologne and rot. I fumbled for my phone, but it was dead too. No service. Just a black screen. The man in the doorway raised one hand and pointed toward the office. Something inside me broke then. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe just the sense that none of this was real anymore. I got out trembling and stepped toward him. The air felt heavier with every step. When I reached the front door again, the ledger was gone. The counter was empty. The light flickered once, then died. The man's voice came from behind me. "You signed in, Wade." I turned, but there was no one there. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I remember, it was morning. My truck started fine, the motel dark again. I drove straight to Midland, straight to the sheriff's office. They humored me, sent a deputy out to check. When he came back, he said the motel was still boarded up tight. No open doors, no ledger, nothing. I tried to forget it, but last night I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I heard a knock on my front door. When I opened it, no one was there, but on the porch, lying flat against the wood, was a torn page. It was from the same ledger. At the top, in perfect cursive, was my name. Under it, today's date, and beside it, a single check mark. I burned it, but I can still smell the paper when I wake up. I think it's in my house somewhere, that ledger, waiting for me to stop fighting it. I haven't left the house all day. My phone keeps ringing, but there's never anyone on the other end. Just static, and somewhere deep in it, I swear I hear a bell. Like the one they used to keep on the motel counter, ringing for service. I know what it means. It means my room's ready. My name is Luke Harlan, and I'm from Abilene, Texas. I was driving west on Route 84 late one November evening, heading back from visiting my sister in Lubbock. The road was nearly empty. Just that long black ribbon stretching through the dark, the hum of the tires and the occasional thud of insects hitting the windshield keeping me company. I'd been on the road for almost 3 hours running on coffee and gas station jerky when my stomach started to cramp and I knew I needed to stop. The next town wasn't for another 40 miles, but then I saw the green reflective sign, Rest Area, 1 mile. It was one of those older stops, the kind that must have been built in the 70s and hadn't seen a renovation since. The lights along the driveway flickered like dying fireflies, and the concrete building stood squat and gray beneath a buzzing streetlight. There were no other cars, just mine. I remember thinking that was strange. Truckers usually parked overnight at these places, or travelers like me taking bathroom breaks. But the lot was empty except for a broken-down soda machine humming near the entrance. Inside, the air was cold and stale, smelling faintly of bleach and something metallic like rust or dried blood. My boots echoed on the tile as I walked in. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered weakly, painting everything in sickly yellow. I went to the row of stalls at the back. All the doors were open, toilets gleaming white under the buzz of light. Empty. I chose the far one, took care of business, and tried not to think about how quiet it was. When I came out, the silence pressed down thicker than before. The air felt heavy, like the building was holding its breath. I went to the sink, turned on the faucet, and let the cold water run over my hands. The pipes groaned deep inside the wall, and I caught my own reflection in the spotted mirror. Tired eyes, stubble shadowing my jaw, the kind of face that looked older under fluorescent light. That's when I saw it. In the mirror behind me, a pair of shoes under the middle stall door. At first I just blinked, thinking maybe I'd missed someone coming in. Brown leather boots scuffed at the toes but turned inward. Heels facing the toilet, toes pointed toward the door. That didn't make sense. The person inside would have to be standing backwards on the toilet, facing the wall. I turned slightly, pretending to grab a paper towel, trying to see if maybe I was imagining it. The shoes didn't move. No sound, no shifting, no cough or rustle, just the faintest reflection of light glinting off their worn leather. Sorry, man," I said. My voice sounded too loud. "Didn't mean to startle you." "Nothing." I waited a few seconds, then forced a laugh. "You good in there?" The silence stretched. I realized I could hear the ticking of the light fixture, that faint electrical pop. The shoes didn't move an inch. A chill crept up my arms. I don't know why, but I had this sudden urge to leave and to just walk out, get in my truck and drive until I saw headlights again. But curiosity's a nasty thing. I stepped closer, one slow foot at a time. From that angle, I could see just a bit of the stall's interior through the gap at the bottom of the door. The boots were old cowboy style, the kind you'd find at a thrift store with cracked soles and dull spurs that didn't shine anymore. They were maybe 2 inches off the floor, like whoever wore them was standing on the toilet seat. I leaned down, peered under the door. Empty, no legs, no person. Just those boots hovering there, their tips pointed at me. My throat went dry. I backed up fast, heart hammering, almost slipping on the wet floor. The faucet was still running behind me, spraying water into the sink like static. I looked again at the mirror. The shoes were gone. The stall door was closed tight. That was enough for me. I turned off the faucet, grabbed a paper towel with shaking hands and started toward the exit. But as I passed the stalls, something made me stop. A sound, faint but distinct, like whispering. It was coming from that same stall, low and strained, like someone talking through gritted teeth. I couldn't make out words, just the tone, urgent, desperate, almost pleading. I froze. "Hello," I said. The whispering stopped. Then the toilet flushed, but the handle hadn't moved. I saw it. The chrome lever was still, yet the water roared, then gurgled back down into silence. I stumbled backward until I hit the wall. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the paper towel. I bolted for the door, but the handle wouldn't turn. It felt slick, like something oily coated it. I wiped my hand on my jeans, tried again. It finally clicked open. I rushed outside into the cold night air, gasping like I'd been underwater. The parking lot was still empty. My truck sat where I'd left it, the engine ticking from cooling metal. I climbed in, locked the doors, and sat there gripping the steering wheel, trying to convince myself it was just exhaustion playing tricks. Maybe I'd dozed off at the wheel for a second. Maybe I'd imagined it. Then I looked up. Through the restroom window, dimly lit by that buzzing fluorescent light, I saw movement. A figure, someone or something, and standing just behind the glass. It wasn't clear, more like a shadow caught in fog, but I could see enough to know it was tall and wrong in its posture. The head tilted too far, the shoulders hunched like broken wings. It was facing the window, facing me. I started the engine and slammed the truck into reverse, gravel spitting under the tires. The figure didn't move. I hit the gas and tore out of that rest stop, not slowing until I was halfway to Sweetwater. When I finally stopped at a diner there, I went straight to the restroom just to prove to myself it had been nothing. Clean, bright, normal. A guy washing his hands nodded at me in the mirror and smiled. I almost cried with relief. I told the waitress about it while she poured my coffee. She gave me a strange look and said the old rest stop on Route 84 had been closed for years, condemned after a man was found dead in one of the stalls. Hung himself, she said. When they found him, his boots were turned the wrong way. I don't drive that stretch anymore, but sometimes when I take the longer route west, I still see that flickering streetlight through the trees, and I swear every time I catch the faint glint of brown leather under that window waiting. My name is Wade Collier, and I'm from Huntsville, Texas. I drive an old '94 Ford F-150 that's more rust than paint. The kind of truck that still smells faintly of oil and cigarettes no matter how much air freshener you hang on the mirror. I've had it since high school, and the thing's never failed me. Until that night last November. when I was heading up Highway 19 through the pine woods north of Riverside, listening to the AM radio like I always do. It started like any other drive. I'd been working late at the prison, maintenance shift, and I was dog-tired, trying to keep my eyes open on the long, dark stretch of highway. My phone was dead and I didn't want to nod off, so I turned on the radio. I usually keep it tuned to 7:30 a.m., a little country station out of Lufkin that plays Old George Strait and Johnny Paycheck deep into the night. But when I twisted the dial that evening, all I got was static. Then, just as I was about to give up, a voice cut through the hiss, clear as if it was sitting in the passenger seat beside me. "Good evening, listeners," the man said, slow and smooth, with that syrupy East Texas drawl. "You're tuned to KPRX 1030 AM, broadcasting live from somewhere along Highway 19. Stay with us tonight for some real country and a look at what's happening out on the roads." I'd never heard of that station before. I figured it was one of those tiny independent ones that only reached a few miles. But the sound came in strong, too strong, like it was beamed straight into the dash. Then came a familiar twang of steel guitar, "He Stopped Loving Her Today," and I relaxed a little, letting the music roll over me. The night outside was black as ink, no moon, no stars, just the yellow line unspooling in front of my headlights and the whisper of pine needles against the wind. About 10 minutes later, the song faded out and the same voice came back. "All right, folks," he said, cheerful as could be. "We've got a few updates for y'all driving this fine Texas evening. Looks like there's been a bit of a situation just north of Riverside. Pickup truck flipped on the shoulder near mile marker 88. One confirmed fatality. If you're in the area, drive safe and keep them prayers going." I frowned. That was the very road I was on. And I hadn't seen a thing. No flashing lights, no wreckage, nothing but dark woods. I looked at my speedometer, checked my mirrors. Nothing. Maybe it happened ahead of me, I thought. A few minutes later, I came up on mile marker 88. The shoulder was empty, no skid marks, no glass, no sign of an accident. That's when my stomach started to twist a little. I tried to laugh it off. Probably an old report, I figured. Some replay from earlier in the week. Maybe I'd misheard the town name. But something about the announcer's voice stuck with me, like he was talking just to me. Personal. Too personal. The next song came on, Amarillo by Morning. I cranked it up and tried to drown out the unease, but when it ended, the announcer was back again, sounding chipper as ever. "Update for them late-night travelers. Wreck's been cleared at mile marker 88, but we've got another situation brewing. Small sedan lost control down by the Walker County line, struck the guardrail. Looks like we've got injuries this time. Y'all be careful out there." I felt a cold trickle run down my spine. The Walker County line was just a few miles ahead. I glanced out the window again, half expecting to see flashing lights painting the trees red and blue, but there was nothing. Still, I slowed down. And it was a good thing I did. Not half a mile later, a deer darted across the road, eyes shining white in my headlights. If I hadn't tapped the brakes right then, I'd have nailed it dead on. The radio crackled again, faintly, like static trying to form words. "Good reflexes, Wade," the announcer said. I slammed the dial off. My hands were shaking so hard I almost veered into the ditch. I hadn't told the radio my name. Hell, I didn't even think that station existed. I sat there for a second, pulled over on the shoulder, breathing hard and staring into the dark trees. The air smelled like damp pine and exhaust. The silence pressed in on me. No crickets, no frogs, nothing but my own pulse pounding in my ears. After a few minutes, I told myself I must have imagined it. Fatigue can make a man hear things, especially when he's alone at night. I turned the key again, started rolling north. Against my better judgment, I turned the radio back on, static. Then, "Thanks for staying with us, Wade," the voice drawled. "We sure do appreciate a loyal listener. You keep us company, we keep you safe. That's how it works." My mouth went dry. "Who the hell is this?" I muttered. The voice didn't answer, just let out a low chuckle, friendly but wrong somehow, like someone trying too hard to sound human. Then the music started again, something old and crackling, maybe Hank Williams. I should have turned it off right then, but part of me couldn't. It was like a compulsion. Every word the announcer said seemed to crawl under my skin, and I needed to know what he'd say next. About 10 minutes later, his tone changed. The warmth drained out of it, replaced by something flatter, emptier. Attention, folks. We've got a serious accident reported south of Huntsville. Lone vehicle. Red Ford pickup. Driver lost control near mile marker 92. Fatality expected. That was me. I slammed on the brakes so hard the truck fishtailed, skidding across both lanes before stopping halfway on the shoulder. My heart was hammering so loud I thought it might drown out the radio, but the voice kept talking, calm and steady. "Now, don't be scared, Wade," he said softly. "Ain't no use fighting what's already coming. You've been a good listener tonight. That's what we like, folks who pay attention." I threw the truck in reverse, trying to turn around, but the engine sputtered. The headlights flickered. The dashboard lights dimmed until the only thing glowing in the cab was that damn radio dial, burning orange like an ember. And through the static, I thought I heard other voices whispering behind the announcers, low and desperate, like a dozen people all trying to speak through the same crackling line. "Help us," one of them hissed. "He's still on the air." I grabbed the dial and yanked it out of the console, wires sparking. The sound cut off, but only for a second. Then it came back, even without the radio connected. "You can't turn us off, Wade," the voice said from everywhere and nowhere. "We're live." That was the last thing I remember clearly. I woke up the next morning on the side of the highway, truck idling, dawn just breaking through the trees. My radio was gone, wires hanging loose like torn veins. There were skid marks behind me and a dent in the guardrail. No other cars, no police, no sign of any accident. Just a faint smell of burnt metal in the air. I drove straight home, called the station listings, even checked online. There's no record of any KPRX 1030 AM anywhere in Texas, or anywhere else for that matter. But sometimes, late at night when I drive that stretch of road, I still pick up static on the same frequency. Sometimes if I listen close I can hear that voice again. He always starts the same way. "Good evening, listeners. You're tuned to KPRX Highway 19 Radio, broadcasting live for the lost." My name is Clay Hensley and I'm from Luling, Texas. Folks around here call it the watermelon capital. But to me, it's always just been a sunburned patch of forgotten land, where the highways bleed into the horizon, and the air smells faintly of oil and something older. I used to run deliveries for a machine shop outside San Marcos, which meant a lot of late-night drives down the back roads, long ribbons of asphalt cutting through fields of mesquite and rusting barbed wire. If you've ever driven those roads past midnight, you know the feeling, the kind of silence that eats at you, the stars so bright they don't look real, and the steady hum of your tires like a heartbeat trying to keep you company. It was on one of those nights, late September, 2 years ago, that I first heard about the wrecker. At the time, it was just a story guys told to spook new hires. Supposedly, there was a tow truck that prowled the farm-to-market roads after dark, its high beams always off, running quiet as a ghost. Folks said it showed up whenever someone broke down, right when their battery or phone signal died. A beat-up wrecker, red paint faded to pink, dragging a chain that sparked along the asphalt. The driver never got out. You'd see the door open, maybe a figure inside, maybe not, and next thing anyone knew, you were gone. No trace, no wreck, no body, no car. Just gone. I'd heard the story enough times to roll my eyes. I even joked about it right up until the night I met the damn thing. That night, I'd finished a late drop-off in Sheener and decided to take FM 86 back toward Luling. It was after 11. The moon a pale sliver behind thin clouds, and the road was empty except for the occasional armadillo frozen in my headlights. About 15 miles out, my old Chevy started running rough, spitting and coughing like it had bad gas. I pulled over near a wind-bent oak tree and popped the hood. I wasn't worried. I'd fixed enough engines to know my way around one. But when I flicked on my flashlight, the beam dimmed almost immediately, the batteries fading faster than made sense. The air felt heavy, damp, like a storm coming, though the forecast had been clear. I was bent over the engine when I heard it, the low metallic clatter of a chain dragging somewhere down the road. At first I thought it might be a cow fence gate swinging in the wind, but the sound grew louder, steadier. Then came the faint glow of headlights cresting the hill behind me. No, not headlights, more like one flickering light on the passenger side, yellow and weak. A tow truck by the shape of it, old model, maybe 70s or 80s. It slowed as it approached, engine rumbling low, then stopped right behind my truck. I waved, calling out, "Appreciate it, man." "Think my fuel line's clogged." No answer. The engine idled, a deep, uneven growl. I couldn't make out the cab. The windshield reflected my flashlight back at me like a mirror. I took a few steps closer, keeping my voice friendly. "Hey, you from Luling? Didn't know anyone was still running this late." The driver's door creaked open just a hair, maybe an inch, maybe two, and I swear I saw movement inside, a shifting shadow. Then the chain dragging sound stopped. Silence swallowed everything but the idle. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I told myself it was nerves, but there was something wrong about how still the world had gotten. How not even the crickets were chirping. I backed toward my truck, saying, "Thanks for stopping." But I got it handled. That's when the tow truck's engine cut off. Just like that, dead quiet. The single headlight flickered once, then died. The moon slipped behind clouds, and all I could see was the faint silhouette of that wrecker against the road. A metallic tap rang out like a chain hitting metal, and then footsteps, slow, deliberate, gravel crunching. I swung my flashlight toward the sound, but the beam sputtered again, weak as a candle flame. There was no one there. No driver, no movement, but the driver's door was open now, wide enough for someone to step out. My first instinct was to get in my truck, lock the doors, and floor it. I climbed in, turned the key, and the engine sputtered once, twice. Dead, I cursed, trying again, nothing. My headlights dimmed, then went black. The only light left was the faint glow of the wrecker's taillights, blood red, pulsing faintly like breathing. And then I heard it again, right outside my window. A voice. Not a whisper, not quite a word, but something like my own name drawn out, distorted. Clay. I froze. The window glass fogged slightly, though it wasn't cold. Something was right on the other side. I could hear breathing. Shallow, ragged, wrong. I forced myself to look, slowly turning my head toward the sound. What I saw made my gut twist. A face, or what might have once been a face, pressed against the glass. The skin was gray and slick, like old rubber left too long in the sun. The eyes sunk deep and glossy. No whites, just dark glassy pits. And that smell. Burnt oil and something rotten. I screamed and slammed my shoulder against the door, but it wouldn't budge. Then the wrecker's engine roared back to life, louder this time, closer, though it hadn't moved. My radio crackled on, static hissing, then a voice through the noise. A dozen voices layered, male and female, all saying the same thing over and over. "Need a tow?" Something yanked the back of my truck. The entire chassis lurched backward, tires squealing. I realized the wrecker's hook was somehow latched onto my bumper. I hit the horn, shouted, kicked the door open, and ran. The gravel bit into my boots as I sprinted into the dark fields, not daring to look back until I reached the fence line. When I did, I wished I hadn't. The wrecker was dragging my Chevy backwards, slow and steady, into the ditch. The driver's door was still open, swinging slightly, and there was nobody inside. Then both vehicles, the wrecker and my truck, flickered like a bad signal on an old TV and vanished. Just gone, no sound, no lights, nothing. I stumbled back toward the road, shaking, breath coming in ragged gasps. The only thing left behind was the gouge in the asphalt where the chain had dragged. A few minutes later, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance, real ones this time. "Sheriff's deputy." I flagged him down, babbling about the wrecker, the face, the chain. He searched the stretch of road, called for backup, found the marks, but no truck, no wreck, no trace of my vehicle. They filed a report, towed me back to town, and told me it was probably thieves or hallucinations from exhaustion. I wanted to believe them. God, I tried. But 2 days later, they found a car abandoned just 10 miles from where I'd broken down. Hood up, engine cold, and hanging from the mirror, wrapped around the rear view, was a length of rusted chain. They said the driver, some college kid from Houston, was nowhere to be found. Only thing left in the car was his phone, last photo taken at 11:48 p.m. A grainy image of a tow truck in the distance, one headlight burned out. I don't drive that road anymore. Hell, I don't drive much at all after dark. But sometimes when the wind's right, I hear it. The faint jangle of a dragging chain somewhere past the tree line, a low engine hum rising from the fields. Folks still break down out there, and every now and then someone new goes missing. They'll tell you the wrecker's just a story, but I've seen his truck, felt the pull of that chain. Out here in the Texas dark, some machines never stop working. My name is Travis McGill, and I'm from a little patch of land outside Waco, Texas, the kind of place where the highway cuts through open pasture, and the only lights at night come from the feed store sign and the blinking red tower on the ridge. I grew up out there with too much space and too little to do, which meant trouble was always just a matter of time and imagination. For us, that trouble started with the old barn out past Highway 77, the one that everyone said hummed after dark. I'd heard the story since I was a kid. People said it used to belong to a farmer named Reddick, who went missing sometime in the 70s. One morning, his cattle broke through the fence and neighbors found them scattered dead across the property. No wounds, just sprawled out like they'd dropped where they stood. No one ever found Reddick. His house burned down a week later and the barn was all that remained. It sat there ever since, half sunk into the red dirt, roof sagging, doors chained. Folks claimed you could hear it humming if you drove by late enough. A low, steady sound like a swarm of bees trapped under the wood. I never believed much of it until that August when I was 16. The heat was thick that summer, and nights never cooled off enough to make you comfortable. Me, my cousin Eli, and a couple of friends, Wes and Jamie, used to hang out near the dry creek bed behind Eli's place. We'd light a small fire, drink warm Shiner beers stolen from his dad, and talk about girls we never had the courage to talk to. That night, though, Wes brought up the barn. He said his older brother swore he'd seen lights flickering inside it last week. Eli rolled his eyes, but I saw something in Wes's face that made me wonder if he was telling the truth. "You don't believe me?" Wes said, poking at the fire. "Then let's go, tonight." It was one of those moments you look back on and wish you'd just laughed it off. But teenage pride is louder than common sense. 10 minutes later, we piled into Eli's rusted Ford, headlights cutting through clouds of dust as we turned down County Road 16. The barn sat back off the road, half hidden behind mesquite trees and tall Johnson grass. The closer we got, the quieter it seemed. Even the crickets went still. The hum started before we saw the barn. It was faint at first, low and rhythmic, almost like a far-off engine. As we parked, the sound grew louder, steady as breathing. We killed the lights, sat there for a minute, listening. Nobody said anything. The barn loomed ahead, silver gray in the moonlight, doors hanging crooked on their hinges. The air around it felt wrong, thicker somehow, like walking underwater. Eli broke the silence. "You hear that, right?" "Yeah," Jamie whispered. "It's vibrating." The ground under our boots seemed to tremble, not enough to see, but enough to feel in your bones. The hum came from inside, no doubt about it. I told myself it had to be something mechanical, maybe a generator or wind through the tin walls. But it didn't sound like that. It sounded alive. We pushed through the tall grass, flashlights cutting narrow tunnels of light through the dark. The barn's doors were chained, just like the story said, but someone had pried them open wide enough for us to squeeze through. The moment I stepped inside, the hum filled my chest, deep and constant. Dust hung in the air, glittering in the flashlight beams. The smell hit next, something old and rotten like wet hay mixed with rust. There wasn't much inside at first glance. A few rotted stalls, piles of straw, a rusted tractor half buried in the dirt. But along the far wall there was a workbench, and on it, scattered like playing cards, were Polaroid photos. Dozens of them. Eli shined his light over them and we all froze. Every single photo showed one of us, not here in the barn but at home. In bed, asleep, the pictures were recent. I could tell by the calendar pinned above my nightstand and mine. It was still on August. There was one of Eli curled under his Astros blanket, mouth open, mid-snore. Another of Wes lying on his side, the glow of his TV faint in the corner. Even Jamie had one, her hair spread across her pillow, her window curtains drawn behind her. I counted at least 20 photos, each one of us taken from a few feet away, through half-open doors or windows. No one spoke for a long time. I felt a chill crawl up my spine despite the heat. The hum seemed to pulse louder now, deeper. I tried to laugh, to make it seem like some sick prank. But when I turned over one of the photos, there was a date scribbled on the back in red ink. August 15th, 2003, 2:14 a.m. That was last night. Eli swore and dropped his flashlight. The beam swung across the barn, catching something high up near the rafters and a shape. At first I thought it was a tarp or maybe a sheet, but then it moved. Something hunched, gray and long-limbed, slid along the beam, its skin reflecting just enough light to show it was slick. It didn't look like a man or an animal. It looked like something caught in between. The hum rose until it felt like the air itself was shaking. My teeth rattled. The thing in the rafters tilted its head, slow and deliberate, as if it could see us. I grabbed Eli's arm, but he was staring upward, mouth open. Wes bolted first, sprinting for the door. The rest of us followed, crashing through the tall grass, not daring to look back. The hum grew sharper behind us, higher pitched, a mechanical scream that cut off the moment we reached the truck. No one spoke on the drive back. Wes's hands shook on the wheel. The headlights carved through the dark fields, and I swear once I saw something moving in the mirror behind us. A pale blur darting along the roadside fence, keeping pace. We never went back to the barn. A few days later, Eli's mom found him standing outside his house at 3 a.m, barefoot and staring at the sky. He didn't remember getting up. When I asked him about it, he said he'd had a dream, that something was standing over his bed, humming. 2 nights after that, Wes's dog was found dead on his porch. No marks, no sound, just gone. Then Jamie stopped coming to school. Her mom said she was staying with relatives in Austin, but I saw her bedroom light on one night when I drove past her house. Curtains drawn, faint humming coming from inside. That was 20 years ago. I moved to Dallas after graduation, tried to forget it. But sometimes when I'm half asleep, I hear it again, that low vibration deep in the walls. Last week, I woke to find an envelope on my kitchen counter. No return address. Inside was a single Polaroid. It's me, lying in bed, mouth open mid-breath. The clock on my nightstand reads 2:14 a.m. My name is Caleb Morris, and I'm from Llano, Texas. It was late July, the kind of heat that seems to hum through the air like static, when my wife Jenna and I found ourselves stranded on a dirt road somewhere between Mason and Menard. We'd left Austin that morning for a weekend getaway. Just a small break from the city noise, from her job's endless demands, from my own feeling that life was starting to blur together. The GPS had taken us off the main highway, promising a faster route that turned out to be little more than a rutted path through dry fields and mesquite scrub. By the time the car sputtered and died, the sun had already dipped low behind the horizon, painting the sky the color of bruised peaches. Jenna leaned forward, turning the ignition over and over again, but all we got was that hollow cough of a dead engine. "Battery's fine," I said, lifting the hood and pretending I knew what I was looking for. "Might be the fuel line, or the pump." She got out, shielding her eyes against the settling dusk. "We passed a gas station like 15 minutes ago." "Maybe 20, I said. And nothing since. The road stretched out ahead of us, disappearing into the dark. Behind us, a single telephone pole stood beside a half-collapsed billboard. The ad was old, some kind of vacation spot, but the picture had been burned away. Only the blackened frame and a few warped letters remained. We decided to walk. We figured if we kept following the road back the way we'd come, we'd eventually hit that gas station again. Maybe find someone with a tow truck or at least a phone signal. I grabbed a flashlight from the glove box, and Jenna slung her backpack over her shoulder. The night air carried that strange electric silence you only get far from town. No insects, no wind, just the crunch of our boots on gravel. An hour passed, then 2. The moon rose high and white, and the world took on that washed-out glow that makes everything look a little unreal. That was when we saw it again. The billboard, same one, same burned-out frame, same warped letters like melted bones. "That's impossible," Jenna said, stopping dead. I shone the flashlight on it, trying to find something different. A missing panel, a bent pole. But it was identical down to the charred corner and the way the weeds grew around its base. "We must have made a loop," I said, even though the road hadn't forked once. We kept walking. Maybe we'd misjudged the direction. Maybe exhaustion was playing tricks. But an hour later, there it was again. The same billboard looming out of the dark, its skeletal outline cutting across the sky. Jenna started to panic then, her voice trembling. "We didn't turn anywhere, Caleb, we didn't." I tried to calm her down, but truth was my stomach had dropped into ice. I'd heard of people getting lost in the desert, walking in circles, but there was no circle to walk here. Just a single, endless road, straight as a gun barrel. At some point, we both stopped talking. We just kept walking. The flashlight beam trembled in my hand. The air felt heavier. I thought I heard something behind us once, like the slow drag of footsteps, but when I turned, there was only darkness stretching forever. Around what must have been midnight, we saw headlights. A truck. I'd never felt such relief in my life. It came rumbling down the road, an old Ford with rust on the grill and a soft amber glow behind its windshield. I waved both arms and it slowed to a stop beside us. The driver was an older man, maybe late 50s, wearing a sweat-stained hat and denim jacket. His face was lined, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Y'all need help?" he asked, voice gravelly. "Our car broke down a few miles back," I said. We've been walking for hours. He glanced past us down the road. Whereabouts you say that was? Right before the turnoff to Mason, Jenna said. Maybe 10 miles. He nodded slowly. That's strange, he said. I passed a car about 10 miles ahead. Black Honda, right? My mouth went dry. Yeah, that's ours. He leaned closer through the window, his eyes flicking between us. Thing is, he said, it wasn't broke down. Engine was running, lights on, doors wide open. Thought somebody was sitting inside. I felt Jenna's hand clamp around mine. The man looked back down the road again. If y'all want, I can take you up there. But I ain't gonna lie, it didn't look right. We hesitated, but the thought of walking another hour on that road was unbearable. So we climbed in. The truck smelled faintly of gasoline and something else, something sour like old meat. The man didn't speak for the first few minutes. I watched the road through the windshield, but it felt like the world outside wasn't moving at all. The same dirt, the same scrub, the same burned billboard flickering past again and again. Jenna whispered, Caleb, we're not getting closer. I turned to her, about to say something, when the driver spoke up quietly. You ever been out here before? No, I said. He nodded. Ain't many come this way anymore. Used to be a town out here back in the 50s. Whole place burned down one summer. Folks said it was an accident. Others said it wasn't. He gave a small smile, his teeth yellow in the dashlight. They say the road remembers. Brings back what it wants. Jenna shifted uncomfortably. Can you just take us to the car? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, sure. The truck rumbled on, but I started noticing something in the mirror. Movement faint and twitching, like shadows running alongside us in the tall grass. Every time I looked straight, they were gone. When the truck finally slowed, I saw the shape of a vehicle up ahead, parked at an angle across the road, headlights still burning. It was our car. Jenna gasped. The engine was humming softly, and the driver's door hung open like someone had just stepped out. The man turned off his truck. Told you it was running. We got out slowly. The air felt wrong, too still, too quiet. I walked around to the front of the car and froze. There were footprints in the dust. Our footprints. They led from the driver's door down the road, just like before. But there was another set now, fainter, smaller, walking beside them. Jenna's voice was shaking. Caleb, that's not possible. I opened the driver's door and felt heat coming from inside the car, like someone had been sitting there for hours. The seats were indented, shaped like our bodies. Even the dashboard had our fingerprints smudged across it. Y'all should get going, the old man said softly. I turned. What do you mean? He tipped his hat. Road don't like doubles. You stay too long, it gets confused which ones to keep. Before I could speak, he climbed back into his truck. The engine roared, the lights flashed, and then as suddenly as he'd appeared, he was gone. The sound just vanished. We stood there, the two of us, staring at our car. Eventually, we got in. I turned the key and the engine caught like nothing had ever been wrong. We drove, neither of us spoke. The road behind us disappeared into blackness. By sunrise, we reached the highway. When we stopped for gas in Mason, the attendant looked up as we pulled in. Where'd you two come from, he asked. Back road off 377, I said. Car broke down, but we got lucky. He frowned. Back road's been closed 10 years. Whole stretch washed out after that fire. Jenna and I just looked at each other. Later that night, I checked the odometer. It showed 30 extra miles than it should have. But when I looked closer, I realized the numbers were slightly off, like they'd been etched over twice. I didn't tell Jenna that part. And every now and then, driving home late, I catch sight of something out past the headlights. A charred billboard standing in the dark, waiting for us to pass again. My name is Caleb Henson, and I'm from Dry Creek, Texas, a place so small you could drive through it in the time it takes to light a cigarette. Folks don't come here unless they're lost or running from something. The land out west of town stretches flat as bone, cut by thorn bushes and fence wire, with the wind always dragging dust across the asphalt like a whisper that doesn't quit. I used to think I'd die there, maybe of old age or boredom, but not the way it nearly happened that night at the old Harlow Ranch. The one with the windmill that never should have turned. The ranch sits 6 miles past the county line, surrounded by mesquite trees and scrub that grow twisted and low to the ground, as if the land itself's ashamed of them. It's been empty for decades. Old Henry Harlow was the last to live there, until he shot himself in the barn sometime in the 70s. Folks said he'd been hearing voices from the well and that sometimes, even after the place went to ruin, you could see the windmill spinning on nights when the air was dead still. Around Dry Creek, people talk. They said every time it moved without wind, someone in town would die before morning. Now you can laugh at that. I sure did for most of my life. I heard the story from my granddad first when I was maybe 10. He'd been sheriff back then. Said he found Harlow's body himself. Said the gun had rusted solid in the old man's hand. Granddad swore he saw that windmill turning slow that morning, though not a leaf was stirring. I figured it was one of his stories meant to scare me into staying out of trouble. It worked for a while, but time passed, he died, and I grew up and forgot all about it. Until that night last spring when I saw the blades move again. It was around 9 o'clock when the power went out across town. I was sitting in the diner, drinking coffee that tasted like burnt rubber when the lights flickered once and died. The air conditioning shut off and everyone groaned. Old Mrs. Cortez muttered a prayer in Spanish and Dean, the cook, said something about the windmill. I remember laughing, saying, "Ain't no wind tonight, Dean, not even the mosquitoes are flying." He didn't laugh back. He just looked through the window toward the black stretch of highway, where the horizon swallowed everything. "Then you best hope it stays that way," he said. After that, I couldn't shake it. The generator behind the diner coughed once and failed, leaving us all sitting in the dim glow of flashlights and phone screens. I decided to head home before the whole town shut down. My truck started, but the radio spat nothing but static. The road out was so dark it felt like driving through tar. When I passed the last streetlight on the edge of town, I saw it. A faint silver glint in the distance, high above the grass, turning slow. I pulled over. The windmill stood maybe a mile off, its silhouette thin and crooked against the moon. The air was dead still. Not even a breeze. But those blades, they were spinning like something was pushing them from behind. I sat there too long staring. My pulse beat in my throat, though I didn't know why yet. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from my sister, Claire. "You heard about Hank Miller? Found him dead at the station. Heart attack, they think." I looked back at the windmill. It hadn't stopped. Now maybe it was coincidence. That's what I told myself for the next few days. But then a week later it spun again, no wind. I saw it from my porch that time, just before the sheriff. A new kid from Abilene got in a wreck out on Route 17. Hit a deer, they said. Died before the ambulance came. That was enough for me. I decided I'd go out there and see it up close. The Harlow Ranch wasn't hard to find. You could follow the barbed wire fence along the road until it ended in a patch of blackened grass and collapsed boards. The windmill rose from behind the barn, tall and skeletal, blades half rusted and squealing with each turn. Only there wasn't a trace of wind. My shirt clung to me in the still heat. I could hear my heartbeat and nothing else. I walked closer, gravel crunching under my boots. The air had a strange weight, like breathing through wet cotton. I swear the closer I got, the louder the blades sounded, a metallic groan that didn't match how slow they turned. I looked up, and for the first time I noticed something odd. The tail of the windmill, where the paint had long peeled away, was clean. Too clean, like someone had been up there recently. I called out, I don't know why. "Hello? Anyone here?" My voice fell flat against the dry ground. But something moved behind the barn. A scrape. A shape, maybe a person, maybe a shadow. I stepped around the corner, flashlight trembling. The beam caught on a door hanging open, leading into the dark. I could smell old hay, oil, and something else. Sharp like copper. Inside, the barn was cooler. My light skimmed over rusted tools and an old tractor half swallowed by cobwebs. In the center stood the well, its bricks crumbling and black with mildew. The pulley above it had snapped and the rope hung loose, ending in a frayed knot. I don't know what made me look down, but I did. And I saw water, or something like it, far below, rippling though nothing had fallen in. Then the windmill outside stopped. Just like that, in silence. My light flickered, and when it steadied again, I swear I saw a face in the water. Not clear, not like a reflection, it was too far, too dark. But I saw eyes, pale and unblinking, staring back. I stumbled backward, hit the wall, and the flashlight dropped from my hand. That's when I heard the voices, whispering low and thick like water boiling slow. Could have been the wind, except there wasn't any. The words made no sense, a language that felt wrong in my ears. I grabbed the light, ran out into the night, and looked up. The blades were turning again. Fast this time, spinning so quick the tower shook. The air smelled like rain, though the sky was clear. I didn't wait. I drove back to town like the devil was chasing me, engine screaming the whole way. When I got home, my phone was ringing. It was Claire again, sobbing. "You heard about Mrs. Cortez? They found her dead at the diner. Fell right over the counter. That was 3 months ago. Since then, the windmills turned 4 more times. Every single time, someone's died. Doesn't matter if they're old or young, sick or healthy. One spin, one death. I don't go near that ranch anymore, though I can see it from the highway sometimes, a thin black cross against the sky. 2 nights ago, it started again. I watched from my porch as the blades caught the moonlight, whirring though the air was still as a grave. This time it didn't stop. All night long it spun and moaned, and the town stayed dark. I thought maybe the curse had finally burned itself out. Maybe it was done. But this morning, I looked in the mirror, and for a second, just a second, I saw that same face from the well staring back at me. The windmill's still turning now. I can hear it through the walls, even from here in town, groaning like it's calling my name. I think I know who it's spinning for this time. It's spinning for me. My name is Travis Ellison, and I'm from Bollinger, Texas. I was driving back from San Angelo one late August night. The kind of night when the heat doesn't lift even after the sun's been gone for hours. The air felt thick, like it had weight to it. I'd been visiting my sister, helping her move into a new place after her divorce, and I just wanted to get home before midnight. The plan was simple: take Highway 67 north, merge toward Bollinger, and call it a night. Except there was construction. I remember the orange glow of the signs before I even saw the detour. Fresh cones lined the shoulder, and an electronic message board blinked "Road closed ahead. Follow detour" in a lazy rhythm. I slowed down, the hum of the tires changing pitch as I rolled over uneven asphalt. My GPS chirped like it knew what to do. "In 100 feet, turn right." It sent me down a dirt road. I hesitated, but the official-looking detour arrow pointed the same way, so I figured it was fine. The sky was moonless, the kind of black that eats the world past your headlights. Dust rose up in plumes behind me, catching the beams like smoke. I could see the occasional shape of barbed wire fences and scattered mesquite trees. But otherwise it was nothing. No farmhouses, no lights, no signs of anyone else rerouted this way. A mile in, the GPS said, "Continue straight for 5 miles. Except there was no way to tell where straight was. The road wound and twisted like a dried-out creek bed. I followed it anyway, my eyes flicking between the screen and the dark. Then after maybe 10 minutes I saw it, a reflective sign ahead. It was another orange detour marker, arrow pointing left. I turned, dust spilling over the hood, the tires groaning on gravel. Then the GPS said it again. "Continue straight for 5 miles. I frowned. That couldn't be right. I should have been halfway to the merge by then. I pulled over, leaned close to the phone, and saw that the little blue route line just looped, like it was circling the same point. I thought maybe the GPS glitched from bad signal, so I shrugged it off and kept driving. A few minutes later, I saw the same orange sign. At first, I thought maybe there were multiple detours, like one after another, but no. There was the same crooked mesquite tree beside it, the same stretch of washed-out fencing. My stomach turned. I'd gone in a loop. I slowed to a stop and stared at the sign. My headlights washed over it, revealing something I didn't notice before. There was a figure standing behind it. I thought maybe it was a construction worker, but the person didn't move. They were just standing there, tall and still, with their heads slightly bowed. The reflective vest caught the light in patches like it had been torn. I rolled down my window halfway. "Hey!" I called out, no answer. The figure didn't even twitch. The unease started to creep in. I put the car in reverse, thinking I'd back up and turn around, but when I checked the rearview mirror, the road behind me was gone. Just blackness. No taillights reflected, no dust. It was like my headlights didn't reach that far anymore. I put it in drive and went forward again. When I passed the sign, the figure was gone. That's when the GPS spoke again, this time in a flat, almost broken voice. "Continue straight for 5 miles. I drove. I told myself I'd find another turnoff, maybe a farm road or an access route. I counted the seconds just to have something to measure. After about 8 minutes, the sign appeared again. And there were 2 people standing behind it now. One was the same figure I'd seen before, tall, vest hanging off the shoulders, but next to them was something shorter, maybe a woman or a teenager. They both faced me, their clothes streaked with mud or something darker. I felt my skin go cold. I didn't stop this time. I just pressed harder on the gas, swerved past them, and kept going. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, they were standing in the road watching me leave. My hands were shaking. I turned the radio on, desperate for noise, but it was just static. The air conditioning blew hot, even though I cranked it to cold. I thought about calling someone, but I had no signal. Just a little X where the bars should have been. It was around the fourth loop that I started to cry. I didn't even notice it at first. I just realized my face was wet and my voice had gone hoarse from talking to myself. "It's fine," I kept saying. "It's fine, it's fine, it's fine." The GPS repeated the same command and the same stretch of road unfolded again. The headlights caught the dust. The same wire fence, the same sign ahead. This time there were 3 people, all standing still, side by side. The first was the tall one. The second was shorter. The third looked small, like a child. They weren't construction workers. I could see that now. Their clothes didn't look right. Torn shirts, dirt-stained jeans, bare feet. Their faces were pale and they didn't blink when my headlights hit them. Something about the smallest one made me nauseous. It was the way the head tilted. Unnatural, like it couldn't hold itself upright. I swerved to avoid looking directly at them, but as I passed, I could swear their heads turned to follow me. The next loop, there were 4, then 5. By the 7th, my gas gauge was dipping near empty. My eyes felt heavy and I couldn't tell how long I'd been driving. My brain had stopped trying to make sense of it. The road didn't change, the GPS didn't change, and every time I passed that sign, more of them were waiting. 10, 11, 12. By then, they filled both sides of the sign. Some were familiar. I swear I recognized one, a man in a plaid shirt I'd seen on a missing persons flyer years back. I remembered because it was taped to the door of a gas station in San Angelo. Another face looked like a girl I'd gone to high school with, only bloated, her eyes sunken deep. And then, on the next loop, there was one more. It was me. He was standing at the end of the line, same clothes, same boots, same dumb red cap I'd been wearing all day. His face was pale like the rest, his eyes dull, unfocused. My stomach turned over. I slammed the brakes, dust exploding in the headlights. I screamed at him, at whatever the hell was happening. But he didn't move. None of them did. The GPS buzzed again. Continue straight for 5 miles. I put my foot on the gas and didn't look back. The world felt like it was folding in on itself. The same road looping tighter like a noose. The car started sputtering. The fuel light blinked. And just before the engine died, I looked up and saw the sign again, closer than ever. The figures now crowding the road, shoulder to shoulder, stretching into the dark beyond my lights. They weren't standing anymore. They were moving toward me. When the headlights flickered, I caught the reflection of 100 pairs of eyes. I woke up in my car at dawn, engine dead, phone cold in my lap. The dirt road behind me was gone. Just an open stretch of fresh paved highway. A state trooper tapped on my window and asked if I was okay. Said he'd been patrolling that stretch for years and never heard of any detour down there. He asked where I was coming from. I told him I couldn't remember. Later, when I looked at my phone, there was only one photo in the gallery, one I don't remember taking. It showed the orange sign, dust swirling in the beam of my headlights, and behind it a crowd of people, all of them staring right at me. My name is Clay Redding, and I'm from Huntsville, Texas. I drive a long stretch of Highway 45 more often than I care to admit. It's the kind of road that hums under your tires for hours. The sort of place where your thoughts get loud enough to bother you. I work deliveries, medical supplies mostly, and I've done the Houston to Dallas run so many times that I can picture every rest stop, every billboard, every dead armadillo on the shoulder. But a few years back on one of those drives, I saw something that's been chewing at the corners of my mind ever since. It was a little after midnight, heading southbound out of Corsicana. The sky was empty, no stars, no moon. Just that sick sodium glow from the truck's dash and the endless pitch ahead. I'd been driving nearly 4 hours straight, and I was starting to get that itchy exhaustion. The kind that makes the lines in the road start to swim. The GPS showed nothing unusual. No construction, no detours. Just the same black ribbon through pine woods and pastures. That's when I saw it. A green exit sign, the kind you see every few miles, only this one said home. It wasn't a town name. Just that single word in block letters, reflective paint gleaming when my headlights hit it. Home, next right. I even said it out loud like the word needed to make sense coming out of my mouth. I didn't remember any home off Highway 45. I knew that stretch like the back of my hand, Palestine, Buffalo, Centerville, but nothing called home. As I passed, my GPS glitched. The map blinked, then the road vanished off the screen like it was swallowed by static. I slowed down, rubbing my eyes, and in my rearview mirror I could still see the glow of that sign behind me, though it should have been out of sight by then. I almost kept going. Should have, really. But curiosity, or maybe that soft whisper of loneliness that hangs over long nights, got the better of me. I turned around. The exit ramp was narrow, the paint fresh. No other signs, no lights from nearby houses, nothing. Just an arrow pointing off into the trees. The asphalt was smooth, too smooth, like it hadn't seen much traffic. My headlights caught the edge of the woods where the highway gave way to tall pines, their trunks packed tight as prison bars. The ramp curved out of sight, and as I took it, the sound of the highway faded until there was only the hum of my engine and the occasional tap of a branch against the roof. A half-mile down, the ramp ended. No stop sign, no intersection, just a single-lane road leading into the dark. I should have backed up, but there was something about the quiet. Something almost magnetic. The air felt heavy, thick in my chest, and it smelled faintly of rain and cut grass, though it hadn't rained in days. After maybe 5 minutes, I saw lights ahead. A faint yellow glow like the kind that leaks from a house at night. My stomach tightened. There was a figure standing in the road, someone waving a flashlight. I slowed, rolled down my window and called out, "Hey, you all right out here?" The man didn't answer. He just pointed down the road, the beam trembling in his hand. I noticed then that his clothes were wet, dark and clinging to him, though there wasn't a drop of rain on my windshield. His eyes caught the light and flashed pale like a cat's. "Everything okay?" I asked again. My voice sounded wrong in the stillness, too loud, too alive. He lowered the flashlight and smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It looked like a reflex, lips stretching without a reason behind them. "You're close," he said. His voice was flat, like someone repeating words they'd practiced too many times. "Go on ahead." "You're almost home." I didn't answer. My instincts screamed at me to leave, to throw the truck in reverse and find my way back to the interstate. But he stepped aside slowly, like a crossing guard waving me through, and something in me just obeyed. I drove past him, and in my mirror he was gone. Not walking away, not fading into the dark, just gone. The road widened a bit, opening into what looked like an old subdivision. 6 houses, all the same ranch-style layout, the kind you see in forgotten Texas towns. But every window was black. Not a porch light, not a flicker from inside. My headlights fell across mailboxes leaning at odd angles, toys left in yards coated in dirt, and a swing set that creaked though there wasn't a breath of wind. Then I saw it, a car parked in one of the driveways. A white sedan, engine running, lights on, but no one inside. The driver's door hung open. I stopped beside it, leaned over the passenger seat, and saw a purse on the floorboard, a child's blanket on the back seat. The dashboard clock was flashing nonsense numbers, all zeros, and then my headlights dimmed. The air in the cab dropped cold so fast I could see my breath. The truck's radio hissed to life on its own. Static first, then a voice, soft and close. "Clay," it said. Just that, my name. I slammed it into drive and floored it. The road twisted sharper than before, and the trees seemed to move closer, branches scraping along the doors like fingernails. I looked for the highway, for any sign of the exit ramp, but there was nothing. Just the same loop of houses, the same car, the same driveway flashing past again and again like a film reel stuck on replay. Every time I passed, the driver's door was a little more open until it was hanging wide, and the blanket in the back seat was gone. The 4th time around, I saw something in the middle of the road, a woman holding a baby. She didn't move. Didn't even flinch as I swerved around her. When I looked in the mirror, she was standing right behind the truck, closer than physics should have allowed. Her face slack and wet, her eyes wide and gray. The 5th time, the car was gone altogether. I don't remember how I got back on 45. One second I was driving through those trees. The next I was roaring southbound again, my headlights slicing through open air. The GPS flickered back on like nothing had happened. I pulled into a gas station outside Madisonville, shaking so hard I spilled coffee down my sleeve. The clerk asked if I was all right. I told him I'd taken a wrong turn. A week later, I heard about a couple from Palestine who'd gone missing. They'd last been seen on Highway 45. Their car was found 12 days after that. Empty, engine still running, lights on, parked on the shoulder near mile marker 239. Same stretch I'd been on. Sometimes when I drive that route now, I see the reflection of a green sign in the distance. It's not always there, but when it is, I slow down. It always says the same thing: home, next right. And every now and then, just before it fades, I swear I hear a child crying somewhere behind me, muffled and far away. My name is Caleb Whitaker, and I'm from Crockett, Texas. I grew up with rain that came sideways in the pines, with roads that unspool between bar ditches and cow pastures, with church signs that changed their verses on a leaning letterboard. I was 15 the first time I heard about the church bus that wrecks every year on County Road 2145, out past where the old peach orchard used to be. Folks called it Gospel Lane because of a clapboard chapel that was hauled off in '92, but the county maps never changed the number. If you go out there in a storm, they said, on the same night in late October, you see headlights crest the hill and hear brakes scream, and then you find the crushed shell of a bus on its side with children crying inside. By dawn, the road is empty, and there's no record of any school or congregation missing a bus. No skid marks, no broken glass, no insurance adjuster with a clipboard. Just a place where the air feels off, like the pressure changes when you open a walk-in cooler. Stories like that hang around small towns because there's nothing better to do. I used to laugh it away. Then I took a job with Bright Star Towing after high school, driving a battered Chevy rollback that rattled like a shopping cart. You learn the road's different at 3 in the morning. The signs are shine and shadow, the pavement a ribbon scored with tar snakes, the world cut to the slice of your headlights and whatever your imagination fills in on either side. You listen to the scanner, to the county sheriff calling out mile markers and frantic voices that need you to bring chains and winches, and that permanent smell of antifreeze. And after enough nights like that, you notice the dates. October 24th. That was the day in amber. Alert went out for 3 counties because somebody thought they saw a school bus with the wrong plates on Highway 7. The next year on the same date, I hauled a flipped cattle trailer off FM 2878 in a rain so hard I had to put my shirt over my nose to breathe. And the year after that, same date again, I got the call I tell people when I have to explain to them why my hair went gray around 26. Dispatch didn't say church bus. They said the words nobody wants to hear in a rainstorm. School bus rollover, unknown number of injuries, possible entrapment. They gave me a location that made my stomach fold, just past the cattle guard on County Road 2145 before the creek crossing. I told them I was 10 minutes out. I shut off the radio because the voice of anybody else felt like a lie, and I didn't want to break the spell of the siren that hadn't started yet. The sky sagged with rain. Pine boughs tore skeins of water into my windshield, and the wipers fought to keep a clear strip. The road out there gets narrow, 1.5 lanes pretending to be 2. The ditches are deep and the cattle guards are old teeth. If you're not from here, you drive like you're apologizing. If you are, you cut through the curves and pretend you've got it. I turned onto 2145 with my auxiliary lights punching cones of glare into the rain and felt the first hitch. No county units, no volunteer fire trucks, no ambulance flash. Usually I'm late to a dance like that, not first. The air tasted metallic. I rolled down the window to sniff for gasoline and got the tannic scent of the creek and the sharp penny reek of wet cedar. The rain muffled everything into a muffled roar, and underneath it a noise slid in. Screams, thin voices high and tearing, the sound of kids who still believe adults know what to do. I crested the slight rise just before the creek and saw it in my high beams. The left side of a white bus punched in where it lay on its flank, front grille buried in the soggy bar ditch. The back end tilted toward the road like a beached whale. The lettered words on the side were washed shiny by the rain. Shady Grove Baptist Church. Times for Sunday school and Bible study listed below in the kind of peel and stick black letters you can buy at Family Dollar. The paint was clean, no tags, no mud tattoos from decades of use. The tires had the blue peel still on them like new dress shoes. But what you never forget is the sound. A dozen voices crying, some calling mama, some saying it hurts, and one little voice repeating the same thing over and over. He didn't look. He didn't look. I threw the truck in park and grabbed my crowbar and my trauma bag. The rain came off the brim of my cap in a sheet. The windshield of the bus had cobweb cracks, and a spider of safety glass had blown inward around the driver's side like frosted sugar. I yanked at the emergency exit, but it stuck, old hinges or new paint or both. I circled to the front and peered through the moire of shattered glass. The aisle lay tilted like a drunk stairwell, children pressed into it by gravity and fear, faces I could only make into smudges. A boy's shoe lay in the front stepwell like something left behind by accident in a field. I saw a hand white on a seatback, small fingers tight. There was a smell not of gasoline after all, but something antiseptic and old sweet, like paper hymnals left in the heat. "Hey," I shouted, "because you have to sound sure. Hey, I'm here. We're gonna get you out. I'm going to make a call for more help." My voice came back softer, dampened by rain. No sirens yet. No gravel pop of anybody else. A girl inside lifted her head, and I think about that girl when I wake from the kind of dream I don't like to tell anyone. She had hair plastered to her forehead and a little cut above one eye that ran a thin line of black-red down her cheek. She looked almost past me, like over my shoulder at something in the road that I didn't dare turn around to see. "Mister?" she said, the word dry in her mouth like she had learned to say it by watching the adults. "Mister, we don't go to that church." I pried at the window gasket until it peeled and a slice of the window came out and clacked off the road. I slid inside, boots finding traction on the ribbed rubber aisle. It felt warmer in there in a wrong way, like breath and fear had heated it. I moved from kid to kid, taking stock without making it sound like that. Hearing their names in a scatter, Bobby, Sarah, Luann, names that felt dated in the way Sunday school rosters feel dated. Names that feel like somebody's aunt had said them too often. I saw no broken bones poking where they shouldn't. No flail chests, thank God, but bruises and cuts and shock. The driver was pinched against the wheel, eyes open and unfixed. His mouth was parted in what could have been a prayer, but words had long since left the shape of it. I didn't try to move him. The kids clung to each other and to me in that sloppy way that makes your heart move out of its place and set itself somewhere more fragile. "What happened?" I asked the girl with the cut, because sometimes talking keeps people from slipping away. She blinked at me and then looked down at the embroidered cross on the back of the next seat. "We were singing," she said, "and then we weren't. He didn't look. He didn't see it." "What didn't he see, baby?" She swallowed. "The other bus." The rain softened, or maybe the world just closed in on the bus for a minute. I heard, as if underwater, the drumming of drops on sheet metal and the squeak of leather sneakers against rubber. "There's no other bus," I said, just to say something. "Oh," she said, like I had just told her a small new rule. Then it was us both times. I reached for my radio and thumbed it, but the LED that should have glowed didn't. Dead as a dry stick. I tried my phone, nothing. No bars, no ghost of a bar. The kids began to rock. A whimper that rose back up into cries because silence lets fear talk louder. "Listen to me," I said, pulling my voice into a shape that sounded trusty. "I'm going to go out and put the truck in position and get tools, and then we'll have this door open before you can spell it." "I'm right here, mister," a boy said behind me, voice thin as dental floss. "You're dripping on my new shoes." "I'm sorry, bud," I said without turning, because something in me didn't want to look down at the shoes. Afraid I'd see lake water and fine brown silt clinging to white laces. Afraid I'd see something I'd recognize. I slid back out through the window and the night hit me, cool on my hot face. You learn to count in the quiet. 1, 2, 3, where are the sirens? The road there is a dead run of telephone poles marching away into wet blackness. I popped the compartment on the side of the rollback and pulled out the hydraulic spreader. My hands remembered what to do, the muscle of it a comfort. When I swung back to the bus, my light landed on the words again. Shady Grove Baptist Church, and on the next line, smaller, in careful black vinyl, "Jesus loves the little children." Nobody in Houston County ever heard of a Shady Grove congregation with a bus. "There's a Shady Grove over toward Lovelady, but they don't run a shuttle. The sign on 287 says Shady Spur, but that's a barbecue joint with a neon pig." I knew that even then, and my brain did the thing where it starts dropping facts like weight from a balloon. I wedged the spreader into the seam of the emergency door. The metal groaned when I squeezed the handles. Inside, the kids quieted and started that whispering children do when they see a grown-up is about to do a magic trick. The door frame popped and the smell rose out sharp and sweet, that hymn book scent again. I pulled. The door wept rain from its gasket and then gave. The night breathed in and the bus breathed out. As I helped the first kids out, I saw the details that would come back later like fish in a dark tank. The girl's dress was wrong for the year, a checked pattern too saturated, the tag at her collar marked with a purple laundry stamp instead of ink. The boy's new shoes had a brand I hadn't seen since junior high. One boy clutched a little blue Bible with a zip cover and a plastic fish dangling from the zipper pull. Their haircuts were neat like you see in faded pictures. If it had been a prank, it would have been mean and the kind that takes money. Small towns have mean in them, but not that flavor. I lined them up against the bus in the rain and counted. 12. The driver made 13. I was breathing hard. I told myself the count matched whatever rule I needed it to match. "We have to get Mr. Howard," a boy said, jerking his chin toward the driver. "We can't leave him." "Okay," I said, and that was the first lie I knew for sure I told that night. In the middle of all that, the headlights came, bright and sudden and too high off the ground. They swept across us and the road and pegged on the far trees. I swung my arm up to shield my eyes and made that stupid step backward that you do when your brain says threat. A shape crested the hill, another bus, yellow not white. School bus yellow with black striping, the paint glistening wet, the wipers beating time. For a second it seemed to float. Then its front tires disappeared into the ruts near the cattle guard. The frame bottomed out with a metal shriek, and the whole length of the bus fishtailed sideways across the asphalt, a slow sick slide like a knife leaving a sheath. It missed us by 10 feet, and I swear I saw faces inside, round and pale, turned to us in identical surprise. It hit the ditch on the opposite side and rolled. Or it didn't, because the moment it should have rolled, the world stuttered, the way video feeds glitch when the Wi-Fi can't keep up. The yellow bus skated, juddered, then folded into a shape that looked like the first bus for one heartbeat, white letters and all. And I heard the girl's voice behind me say, calm as if reciting. He didn't look, then the road was empty. Rain and ditch and my floodlights and the white bus breathing with the door open. I turned and counted again on the side of the bus. 12 kids, 13 with the driver, 14. If you counted the man on the shoulder of the road facing away from us, which I hadn't noticed until then. He stood with his hands at his sides as if he'd been set there. I called out because that's what men do in stories and because I have a mean streak of wanting to make things normal. And he turned slow like his head was hung from a wire. I knew his face. The tilted nose, the scar on the chin from a bike wreck at 13, the way his eyes never settled into one color. I knew him because the DMV knows him, because the mirror knows him, because I carry him around every day. I saw myself wet and glistening in the rain, and he smiled with a shape that wasn't mine. He raised a hand and put his 2 fingers together like a scout, and then drew them down his cheek, leaving a clean track through the wet. Then he vanished as if someone closed a door on him in a hurry. I lost the count. I put the kids into the rollback cab, 5 squeezed across the bench, the rest in the back with blankets I kept for drunks. I tried the ignition to make heat and lights, and the engine turned and then didn't. Dead battery or a joke, and the joke was on me. I asked the girl her name and she said Luan, and I told her my name because I needed to hear it in the air as if that made me real. She touched my sleeve with the clean seriousness of a child and said, "Did you do it the first time or the second?" I didn't answer because there was a hollow behind my heart where answers went and I could feel them sliding. Somewhere close a coyote yipped. The rain backed off to a fine grain like dust. Headlights finally bloomed in the distance. A waxing moon of white, and then an ambulance and a volunteer fire truck and the sheriff's Tahoe were crowding the road with light. My voice came back to my throat. The EMTs ran through their questions, hands quick and gentle. The sheriff, who I know and who knows my mother from First Baptist, said to Caleb, "What the hell?" And then he went quiet when he saw the kids lined up. And then he went quieter when he looked past me at the bus because there was no bus there. There was the ditch. There was a length of mashed wet grass like where a deer had bedded down. There was the smell of hymnals in the air for one blink and then only the creek and wet dirt. "Where?" he said, but the word fell apart in the rain. I turned to point to the children. 12 faces looked at me, hesitant, waiting for proof of themselves. My chest did the thing where your body decides to fall without your permission. For a second I saw the kids twice. Once as kids in front of my truck, once as reflections in the wet road. In the reflections they were older, thinner, wearing shirts that said Houston Cougars and Dallas in a font from a year that hadn't happened yet when those names were stitched into their tags. They flickered and then settled, and then they weren't there except for the blankets wet and crumpled in the bed of my truck. The indentations of small weights already filling with rain. The sheriff put his hand on my shoulder and squeezed it to ground me. The way you hold a ladder when you can't fix the thing at the top, but you can make the person on it feel safer. His fingers were cold. "Caleb," he said, "are you on anything tonight?" He was kind about it. "I saw what I saw," I said, and the words sounded stupid because they always do. We stood until dawn came like a gray shirt pulled over the sky. When the light was good, we walked the ditches. We found nothing. Not a shard of taillight plastic. Not a footwell coin. Not a Bible zipper pull. The ambulance techs packed their gear with the slow movements of people who had come to a party that was canceled and left the lights up anyway. After that night, I tried to find Shady Grove Baptist Church. The one in Lovelady swore they had never owned a bus, and besides, their sign font was different, and that seemed like it mattered more than it did. I drove the road every October 24 like I owed it a debt. On the third year, I brought bolt cutters and flares and a bigger battery. I told myself I was going to stop a crash that had already happened or not yet happened. If it came, I'd flag it down. If it didn't, I'd convince myself I'd healed. It came. Of course it came. Headlights crest the hill, brakes scream. The bus slides and becomes the other bus, and then the same bus. The same faces. Luann with a cut that never closed. The boy with new shoes that never get scuffed. The driver with his mouth open like a prayer that can't remember its ending. I do the same things because that's what the night asks. I pry the door. I pull them out. I count. I look up when the other headlights swell because I have to prove to myself that they will. They always will. I learned something I wish I hadn't one year when the rain came late and it was almost midnight before the first scream. The kids weren't there until I heard them. The bus wasn't there until I looked straight at the part of the road where it never is. I learned I was the caller and the answer, the witness and the reenactor, the deer that jumps because it has jumped 1,000 times in its blood, and the truck that carries the dent from it. I learned that if I stand perfectly still with the lights off, the night hushes and the road hums like a tuning fork, and something in me picks up the note with an ache that doesn't belong to me, like I'm being tuned to a key I never learned. If I leave the county on October 24th, if I drive to Lufkin and sit in a Whataburger all night under the cold orange lights eating a dry burger, the rain still follows and the sound still comes in the hum of the HVAC. And at 3:17 in the morning I look up and the bus is at the curb and the kids press their hands to the glass and leave no prints. Once, this last year, if we're going to keep honest, I tried a different sin. I parked the rollback sideways across the road, locked the winch line to a pine and set the brake hard. I lit 3 flares and stuck them down like little suns and stood in the lane with both arms up, like you see in the old safety posters. Headlights came, white and then yellow and then white again in a flicker that made my stomach knot. They bore down on me, and for a heart long I saw a driver who was me and not me, and then I didn't see him at all. And the bus passed through my truck as light moves through fog, and the flares hissed and went out in wet darkness. This is the part I don't tell when somebody at the bar says, "Tell me another ghost story, Whitaker," and I act like I've got a book I can flip to. I don't tell it because it sounds like showing off when really it is just small. The children don't leave footprints, but something else does. Every year, when the road is empty and dawn is trying to be brave, there is a track down the bar ditch where something heavy lay for a while. The grass pressed flat in the length and width of a bus. Only the bend of the stems shows it pressed from the other side of the ground, as if the weight came up from the dirt to meet the wheels. I put my palm on that flattened grass and feel heat, and I think about the way a hymn swells in a small chapel, all those voices lifting together, and what might happen to that sound if the roof was gone and the sky took it, and there was nothing to catch it but the trees and a man with a tow truck who forgot to go home. If you walk the ditch with me, you might notice things I don't. You might notice the purple-black berries of black nightshade and the place where the fence wire sags. And you might tell me these are just details and that I am dressing a story so I can live in it. You might be right. I can tell you the day. I can tell you the time. I can show you the hole in the rubber mat of my rollback where a Bible zipper fish hooked once and then didn't. A crescent of nothing I saved like a relic. If you ask me why there's no record of a missing bus, I'll tell you there is, but not the kind we can get to. It's a record you can only hear when the rain is hard enough to drown reason, when the pine branches tap the roof like fingers counting time. It's a ledger kept under the road with the bones of armadillos and the bottle caps and the lost rings. Every year it opens and every year it closes. We don't get to see the entries. Some of us are the ink. I know the story wants an ending. It wants me to learn the name of the church that never had a bus and find a newspaper clipping about a revival gone wrong. It wants me to stop it. Maybe it wants me to climb into the bus and stay there, to fill in the blank that lets the loop close. Maybe that's why the other me smiled in the rain and made the sign down his cheek like a tailor taking a measure. When the night is quiet and my phone is face down and the tow truck keys hang on the hook just inside the door by habit, I hear the creeping edge of a storm far off over the Trinity River bottoms. I tell myself I can let it come and not go out. I tell myself October will pass like any other month. I tell myself none of it is my fault. Then I notice that my boots are already by the door, and the flashlight is already in my pocket and my hand is already on the knob. I don't believe in callings. I don't believe in curses. I believe in the subtle tilt of a road that looks level until you're rolling. It rained tonight. The kind of rain that fills the ditches to their brims and turns every culvert into a throat. I sat in the truck with the engine off and the world around me the color of wet nickel. I put my hand on the steering wheel and felt the place my grip has polished smooth. I waited until the clock said it was time, not because I needed the time, but because it made me feel like it wasn't deciding without me. When I crested the little hill on 2145, when the telephone poles walked toward me like old men, when the cattle guard's teeth flashed, I saw the first smear of white light. I could have turned away. I could have killed the engine and let the night be a night. I could have driven until I was in Dallas and the only buses were city buses that burp diesel, and no one gives them a second thought. Instead, I put my high beams on and held them there, and the light came and the scream of brakes came and the world shivered into the shape it knows. If you're reading this someday in a place where the night feels ordinary, where rain is just rain and not a drumbeat on a lid you didn't know you were under, remember there is a road in Houston County where a bus full of children crashes, and there's no record of a school nearby, only names that come like old hymns. Remember that by dawn the wreck vanishes and the grass stands back up as if scolded. Remember that someone is there every year to count and fail to count, to promise and fail to save. Remember my name because names belong somewhere, and if you say it under your breath in a storm you might hear me answer. My name is Caleb Whitaker, and on October 24th when the rain starts I am the one who looks. And once you've looked you don't stop. That's the worst of it. Or maybe the worst of it is that tonight, as the bus slides and the world decides, I finally see the driver's face in the cracked windshield clearly. It's mine. The age I was the first year I came out here, mouth open in a prayer I never learned, eyes shocked wide, and I understand the girl was right. It was us both times.
It's still us.
And by dawn there won't be a record, only the marks on my palms from the wheel and a faint smell of old paper that clings to me long after the road is clean. My name is Caleb Rios and I'm from San Marcos. I was 37 that September. The sky over Austin the color of a burned tortilla, the kind of dry heat that makes you feel like a lizard under a heat lamp. I'd spent the day in Lakeway, sweating through a vinyl install in a half-finished condo while a developer with a too-white smile told me I'd get the rest when the punch list was done. My truck, a 2007 F-150 with a stubborn alternator, coughed itself into one last slow turn of the engine in the HEB parking lot off B Cave, then flatlined. By the time I'd persuaded it to stagger as far as Highway 71, it was coughing smoke and I was calculating what parts of my week I could sell. The sky said storm, the dashboard said 2 bars of gas, and my wallet said 1 motel, not too picky. The place I found was called the Heart of Texas Inn, though the red neon heart flickered, so the sign read Heat of Texas. It was a 2-story, strip of exterior doors across from a shuttered taqueria and a pawn shop that had once been a dairy queen. I could see the runway lights winking from Austin Bergstrom if I stood on the bumper and shaded my eyes. The office smelled like a forgotten ashtray, and the woman behind the plexiglass had a radio playing a Tejano station soft as a lullaby. $49 after tax for a single. No pets, no smoking. Ice machine out of order. You want 12? She asked like I'd asked for it. 12's fine, I said, though I never liked ground floors. I paid cash. She slid me a key card with a smudge of lipstick on it, and for some reason I thought of my ex-wife's mouth when she ate strawberries. The way she'd wipe the corner with the pad of her thumb and say, "You're staring again." I swallowed that and went out into air that smelled like hot asphalt and distant rain. Room 12 had a dented safety door with a peephole filled with a little dark fisheye. Inside everything was the color of old teeth. Beige curtains with a floral pattern that looked like something you'd see on a church lady's handkerchief. Beige comforter. Beige wall art of the Capitol dome printed on shiny paper. The carpet had been shampooed with too much lemon cleaner and not enough water. The AC groaned below the window and pushed air that wasn't cool so much as wet. The room phone sat on the little table beside the bed, one of those old office-style models with 12 buttons and a little red light. It had a fake wood grain and a coiled cord that had gone from white to nicotine yellow. That red light blinked steadily as if the phone had a heartbeat. I tossed my duffel onto the chair with the broken wicker seat, clicked the deadbolt, and sat on the edge of the bed. The sheets were hot and smooth. Somewhere above me a toilet ran, then stopped, then ran again like a nervous little lapdog. I kicked off my boots and thought about calling my buddy Ray for a jump in the morning. I thought about the developer's thin smile and the way he'd said the rest like it was a charitable donation. I thought about the empty passenger seat and the divorce papers folded in the glove compartment, because I couldn't bring myself to bring them any closer to my bed. I told myself I'd shower when the AC stopped feeling like a swamp. I closed my eyes. That was when the room phone rang. It sounded too loud, a metal bell in a metal can. I flinched and stared at it. The red light blinked in time with the clang. I let it go 3 rings, then picked it up and pressed it against my ear, expecting a missed dial or a front desk courtesy call. "Hello," I said. I heard what I thought was a recording of my own voice, breathless and close. The line hissed softly like there was rain on both sides of the conversation. Then I heard myself, and I mean myself, saying, "Caleb, get out, please, just get out." The room leaned and then tilted back into place. I thought, some teenager is screwing around with the phone system. I said without meaning to, "Who is this?" "Me," my voice said, and there was a sound that wasn't a laugh, wasn't a sob, but the sound you make when you just figured out you locked your keys inside the house. "Please, you don't have time. Get out." I hung up because that's what you do when you can't think what else, because hanging up is a way to wake up, to shake off a little dream. The phone settled back into itself. I stared at it for a beat. I am not superstitious. I grew up in a house with a Guadalupe candle on the mantel and a Bible on the coffee table, but I never went in for signs. I believe in tools and receipts and the way a sore back tells you the truth about how hard you've worked. I told myself it was the motel switchboard, a crossed line. Some poor bastard in another room talking to a cousin named Caleb. Weird coincidence. The AC wheezed and coughed. The phone rang again. I picked it up so fast I knocked over the plastic ice bucket. "Listen," I said. "Open the door," my voice said. "Put your hand on the knob and open it and walk out. Don't take anything. Don't look back. Just go." "You're me," I said, but not asking. "Yes." The word was crushed flat. "The air, Caleb, it's wrong. You think it's just the AC, but it isn't. You smell it." "You do. It smells like pennies and wet cardboard." That's how it starts. Then it's the phone. Then it's the door. Then it's the light. "Just leave, please." I sniffed without meaning to. There was lemon cleaner, yes. And beneath it, the watery stink of the AC, the faint old road smell of carpet that's seen too many boots, and a nick of something else, metallic and thin, like a coin pressed against your tongue when you were a kid. I made a noise in my throat that wasn't a yes and wasn't a no. "Who are you?" I said again softly. "I told you," my voice said, sounding very tired and very far away and very close. "You know it. Do you remember the night by the falls when Dad forgot the lantern, and you pretended not to be scared, and then you dropped your key into the water because you didn't want to leave just yet?" I saw it in my head. The green water under the bridge at Spring Lake in San Marcos. The way it caught the last bit of sun and tried to keep it. I'd been 12. I'd never told anyone about the key. You would think the fact that the caller knew it would make me move, but it made me heavier, as if weight could anchor me to the safe version of the world. I squeezed my forehead and felt a headache beginning to bloom behind my eyes. "If this is Ray," I said, because he once did a voice on speakerphone that mimicked our HVAC guy to get me to come drink beers when I had a morning install. "I swear to God." The phone clicked. Deadline. I set the receiver down in its cradle very carefully, like a full cup of hot coffee. The red light kept blinking as if nothing at all had happened. I stood. The room swam the way a boat sways in a slip after a wake rolls through. I planted my feet. I went to the door and put my eye to the peephole. The parking lot was empty except for my truck and a white Camry with a back bumper scraping the ground. The neon sign threw a bloody pulse across the hood of the Camry. The air outside looked smudged, like someone had tried to erase the motel from a photograph but kept smearing the pencil lid. I unlatched the deadbolt and turned the handle. The door didn't open. Swollen wood, I thought. Happens all the time. I put my shoulder against it and it thudded and held. I stepped back, twisted the handle hard and shoved. The door opened 4 inches and stopped against the chain. I looked at the chain. I didn't remember setting it. Maybe I had without thinking. I reached up to slide it back and found it cold and slick, as if someone had drizzled a little oil along its teeth. The phone rang a 3rd time. I left the door hunched open and grabbed the receiver. "What do you want me to do?" I said. And now I could hear it. My voice on the other end breathing in the same rhythm I was breathing, like we were talking through a mirror. 2 steps, he said. 2 steps forward. Put your finger on the chain. Lift up, then slide. Don't look at the TV. Don't look at the mirror. Don't look at anything shiny. Just lift and slide. Then walk out. Don't take your bag. Don't lock the door behind you. Just walk to your truck. Don't try to start it. Walk to the office and knock on the window and tell them to call 911 and then keep walking. Do you hear me? Walk past the pawn shop. Walk to the HEB and stand in the light and don't sit down. If you sit down, you're done. I turned my head very slightly and saw the TV, black glass reflecting the red of the neon heart. Then my own face warped into a funhouse egg. I ducked my head. I touched the chain, lifted, slid. It came away with a tiny chime. The door opened. A slip of evening air came in and I smelled rain and jet fuel and something else, faint as a memory and mean as a warning. I stood there leaning into the door and for a second everything looked intensely printed, every line sharper than it should be. The parking lot pebbles distinct as seeds, the crack in the asphalt shaped exactly like the outline of Travis County. I had the thought, if I leave my bag, someone will take it, as if that mattered. As if anything mattered but stepping out. I picked up my keys from the table without meaning to. My hand made its own decision, which is a thing hands do. The keys felt like ice. "Put them down," the voice said, and there was a new sound behind the words, a soft metallic clink I couldn't place. "Don't take anything that can drag you back in. Put them down." "Drag me back in," I repeated, and my mouth tasted like old pennies now. "Yes," my voice said. "Please." A car went by on 71 with a long watery sound. The AC sputtered and breathed on my ankles like a tired dog. I did not put the keys down. I say that with shame and also with a sort of exhausted pride for the dumb part of me that clings to the small reliables. A key ring, a wallet, a set of sockets. They taught us in shop back in high school that a good habit is just a trench your body falls into. I fell into mine. I took a step toward the door. Then the light over the bed flickered twice and went steady and the room phone made a sound I've never heard a phone make. A tiny dry voice all its own. The whisper of a match that won't catch. I turned to it and in that second I looked directly at the TV and the TV showed me the parking lot like a window. Except the red heart was steady in there. Unblinking, and the Camry was a pickup. My pickup. Except its hood was dented on the wrong side. My stomach went down an elevator shaft. "I can't," I said, and I don't know whether I meant I couldn't put the keys down or couldn't stop looking. "I can't." "Yes, you can," my voice said, and it was someone praying. "I didn't, and I've been here for—" He stopped. The word hung there and then fell. "Please." "How are you doing this?" I asked, wanting the story. Wanting rules, wanting an explanation that would put hooks into the wall so I could hang this on something and walk away. "I don't know," my voice said. "It happens." "It's happening." "It will happen." "I'm calling you because I didn't call me." I waited for it to make sense. It never makes sense. "Just go." A thump thumped through the wall from the room next door. A baby cried, then choked off. The sound came again, softer than nothing. The smell in the room got richer. A warm, sweet stink like the inside of a car left idling in a closed garage. And with it something else, something like burnt sugar. Like an electrical outlet that's been asked to do too much for too long. I felt sweat slide along my spine and thought of wires behind the wall heating up to red. I imagined the story on Cake Sand in the morning about a cheap motel fire, about a man from San Marcos found 2 feet from the door. I moved. I stepped across the room with my head down, feeling the AC's breath on my ankles, feeling the carpet give under my boots like a sponge. I pulled the door wider. The night smelled like a storm that might change its mind. I put my hand on the knob again. The metal was cold on top and warm underneath, like a person's forehead. I stepped out into the doorway. The phone rang again and I did the one thing the voice had told me not to do. I turned my head. There is a way the mind makes a trap for itself, filling it with the things you've always needed near to hand. On the little table beside the phone sat my wallet and a photo of my ex my mother had forced into my hand when we divided the last of the storage unit. The one where she's laughing with a strawberry stain. The one I had sworn I'd keep until I found something new to put there. It lay under the phone's cord and the cord looked like it was pinning her down. I stepped back to free it. I slid the photo out with the ease of a magician's trick and the phone stopped ringing and went to a sound that was neither dial tone nor silence, but a long, deep breath that went on and on. I put the photo into my back pocket. The room seemed suddenly smaller, as if the walls had shifted inward. Nobody's noticing. "Caleb," the voice said, and the way he said my name made my throat close. "You can't take anything. You can't take her. You can't take your truck. You can't take any of it. That's the hook. That's how it keeps you. You said walk to the office," I said. It was easier to keep talking than to look at the mirror that showed the bed, which looked mussed like someone else had been lying there 5 minutes ago. "Yes," he said. "Yes, then keep walking. But you won't if you keep the keys. They're heavy. Don't you feel it? Like a fishing weight. Put them on the bed. Trust me, I did something I am not proud of. I put the keys down and then picked them up again and then put them down again. Like a kid who can't walk past a candy jar without dipping a hand in. My fingers ached. I did not like how good it felt to hold them. I did not like that the ache went away when I set them on the bedspread and came back immediately. Worse, when I lifted them. I set them down. There was sweat on my upper lip. I tasted salt. "Okay," I said. "Okay, I'm going." "Now," the voice said. "Now. Don't wait to feel ready. You won't." I stepped into the doorway again. The parking lot looked exactly as it had before, which somehow made me mistrust it more. The air was sourer out here than in, like the motel itself was exhaling. I took one step onto the concrete lip and the metal handrail vibrated under my palm with a little twang, the way a guitar string will hum if you breathe on it just right. The sky grumbled toward the east. I stepped down. Behind me, the phone rang. A door upstairs opened and shut hard. A woman's voice said something to a child in Spanish and the child said nothing, which is the spookiest noise a child can make. I reached the lot and told my eyes not to check my truck, and they checked anyway. It sat under the light with its dull white hood and the stripe of rust along the wheel, well, like a healed wound. My chest ached like I'd run 2 miles. I walked toward the office. The bell on the office door didn't ring because I didn't open it. The woman was gone and the night window was down. I rapped on the glass with the flat of my fingers and saw my face in the reflection, paler than I like to admit. And behind it, the empty room with its little TV showing a baseball game from maybe yesterday. Nobody came. I rapped again. From behind me, the phone in my room kept ringing. 3 rings, then a pause, then 3 more, steady as the red light. "Hey," I said, and the word felt dumb and small. "Open up." I stood there too long, waiting for an answer that didn't arrive. Waiting was my bad habit. Waiting for the phone to stop. Waiting for my marriage to get better. Waiting for the developer to do the decent thing. Waiting for trucks to fix themselves. For fathers to apologize. For the heat to break. The glass didn't give me anything but my own mouth, thinner than I remembered. I realized I had no plan past this. You can say call 911 all you want, but something in you always hopes you won't have to be the guy waving at the camera in the news clip. I backed away from the window. The neon heart blinked, and in the gap my brain supplied blackness like a hole punched in the night. I turned and started walking, not fast but decisively, the way the voice had told me. Past the pawn shop with its posters for payday loans, past the taqueria's dark counter, out to the edge where 71 hissed. I stood there in the wash of the streetlight. I took a breath, then another. The phone in the room was quieter here, or maybe I just couldn't hear it at all. The smell in the air was only rain and hot rubber and a distant hint of skunk. A pickup rolled past with a dog in the back, and the dog looked at me like it knew something but couldn't say. I stayed there long enough to think I was going to be okay. Then I put my hand in my back pocket and found the photo there, warm from my skin. I took it out with my thumb and forefinger. The strawberry stain near her lip looked brighter out here. The wind picked at the corner. I should have let it pick it right out of my hand. I put it back in my pocket. I told myself it was just a picture and just a pocket. I turned to go back for my wallet. That is where the story forks, and I wish I could unpick it. I can tell you I knew what I was doing was the exact opposite of what the voice had begged me to do. I can tell you there is a kind of pull that has nothing to do with magnets or luck. It's the pull of things you tell yourself you have to own and can't afford to lose. I looked at the stairwell and it looked like the opening of a tunnel on a 2-lane road in the hill country. Dark and cool and whispering, "Come on through." I walked back into the lot, past my truck with its front seat full of soda cups and the glove compartment with the papers I'd been avoiding. I climbed the 2 steps and turned down the little corridor to my room. The door stood open 4 inches like a mouth about to tell a secret. As I reached for it, my phone buzzed in my pocket, my cell phone, and I nearly dropped everything. The screen showed unknown caller. I answered without thinking. "Yeah, don't," said my voice, and I could hear wind in it now and a far-off mechanical hum like a floor buffer or a dentist's drill. "Please, every step in is another link. The door looks open but the hinge is closed. Please, go to the light. Keep walking." "I just forgot my wallet," I said. "I've got to pay for the tow tomorrow, you know how it is." Silence for a beat, then, "Caleb, listen to me. The door isn't a door anymore. It looks like one. It feels like one. It isn't, it's the mouth you noticed. You step through and it closes and then you do this." There was a clatter in the line like the receiver hitting a table. "Then you call. Then you call. Then you call." From inside the room, the old landline rang again. From inside the phone's ear inside my cell phone, I heard the same ring echo, tinny and small and untrue, and it made a loop in my head that tugged like a riptide. I stared into the room and saw the bed, the keys shining dull as fish scales, the little table, the mirror, the TV flashing the neon pulse from outside. I saw myself in the mirror not quite where I should be, like my shoulders had lagged behind me by half an inch. "Okay," I said. But it wasn't a promise. I should tell you I turned and saved myself. I should tell you I kept walking to the H-E-B and sat in the cut fruit section under the bright cold lights until the world felt ordinary. Again, and a tow guy named Rusty came and we laughed about alternators while he hooked the chain. I should tell you that, but I can't. I went back in. I told myself it was for one thing. One small harmless thing. A rectangle of leather in the top drawer of the fake wood nightstand. But the minute my boot touched the carpet, I knew the air in there was thicker. Like the room had been holding its breath for my return and was now allowed to let it out. My head swam. The lights flickered and steadied, and in their steadiness was something like intent. The phone rang again. I stepped to the bed and grabbed my keys and wallet in one scoop. The clean, practiced motion of a man about to flee. I turned and hit the door. It closed against me with the soft final sound of a lid. I don't mean it swung. I mean, it was open and then it wasn't, and my shoulder met it, and the little chain chimed though I hadn't slid it, and the deadbolt thudded though I hadn't turned it, and the knob bit into my palm and didn't move. I rattled it. I rattled it harder. "Hey," I said stupidly to the door, to the room, to the woman behind the plexiglass who was not there. I felt the first taste of the fear under my tongue, sour and hot. The AC stopped. The quiet was thick as syrup. My cell phone lost a bar, then another. The little red light on the landline blinked faster as if excited. The line rang and I picked it up because there was only that or scream. Sometimes you pick the thing that makes you feel like you're still part of a world with rules. My own voice whispered, "I told you." And then the whisper turned into a pleading that lasted a long time, and during it I came to understand 2 or 3 things. 1, the smell was carbon and something older than carbon, a sweetness that made the back of my head go warm and cold by turns. 2, the mirror would not show the door no matter where I stood. It would show me, and it would show the bed, and it would show, if I let it, a shape on the bed that looked like me not moving. 3, the phone knows the numbers to every minute you've ever lived and can dial them anytime it wants. I called and called and called. I called the office and heard my breath in my ear. I called the front desk and got my father's voice from 1994 telling me to hold the flashlight still. I called my own cell, and my own cell buzzed in my pocket. And when I answered it, there was my own voice telling me don't, just as it had told me. When I slammed the receiver down, it rang again, and when I threw it off the table, it slid back like a toy pulled by a string. The door's peephole was dark no matter how I bent to it. The TV showed the parking lot where the pickup wasn't my pickup, and the heart light didn't blink. I sat on the bed and felt the keys heavy in my palm and put them down and picked them up and put them down again. Sometime in the deeper part of the night, I took the top of the phone off and looked at its guts. Its little copper guts and its short wires. and I saw the numbers etched onto its board. The same way my mother used to etch our names into our Tupperware with a hot knife. I took the cord and wrapped it around my wrist to keep from running at the door. I talked to myself the way I'm talking to you now. I begged in my own voice and hated myself for being such a coward, and loved myself for not hanging up on me. I told myself what to do. Sometimes I sounded like a man. Sometimes I sounded like a boy. I promised I'd leave the photo. I promised I'd leave the keys. I promised I'd walk. For a while I believed me. When the light came, pale and slow, not the dawn so much as the buzzing fluorescent in the bathroom trying its best, the door opened. It did not creak. It simply was shut, then was open. Air came in that smelled like wet parking lot and microwaved coffee and a little of the river. I stood. My legs belonged to a man older than me. I walked to the doorway and stood in it and looked out at a morning the exact color of the underside of a catfish. Somewhere a plane took off and the sound was a metal note that made the skin along my forearms rise. I wanted to cry with the clean taste of air. I looked at my keys on the bed. I don't know who picked them up, me or the room, but the next thing I knew they were in my hand. I walked out anyway. Down the row, a housekeeper pushed a cart with a crackle of plastic liners. She smiled with only her eyes and said, "Buenos dias." My mouth tried to make the same shape. I stepped into the lot toward the office, toward the sunlight that came in slats through the plywood scrollwork. I reached into my back pocket and felt for the photo and felt nothing. The corner of my mouth lifted all by itself. I kept walking. At the neon heart I stopped, because the office window had a handwritten sign taped on it. "Closed for maintenance," it said. Back at 10, I looked at my watch. It was 9:58, I could wait 2 minutes. Anybody can wait 2 minutes. I stood there and stared at my reflection in the window glass and told myself that 2 minutes was exactly the kind of tiny, harmless thing you are allowed. When the housekeeper reached room 12, she knocked and called, "Housekeeping." And then she knocked again, and then she put her key in the slot and opened the door and stepped back and turned and looked at me, standing there at the office window, as if she could feel my eyes on her. I watched her lift a hand to her mouth and then let it fall. She looked at the phone on the table. It rang and she jumped, and it rang again and she picked it up, because that's what you do when you can't think what else. And she said hello, and then she frowned and turned and looked toward me a long, long second. I lifted my hand. She didn't wave back. The office door opened behind me, and the plexiglass woman stepped up with her coffee and her ponytail and her calm. "You need something, sir?" she asked, and her voice sounded normal, the way everybody else's did. She had no idea the room had used the night to practice being a throat. I said, "Yeah, I think there's something wrong with the phone in 12. My voice had gotten thinner, like I'd been talking a long time. She picked up her landline and dialed an extension and let it ring. We both waited. It rang 6 times. She shrugged a little and set the receiver down, not exactly bothered. "Sometimes lines cross," she said. "You want to switch rooms?" I opened my mouth to say yes. What came out was my own voice on the motel's line from the room, telling me to get out. It traveled through the office phone and hung between us, and the plexiglass woman's face made a shape I wish I could forget. She put her coffee down and picked the receiver back up and set it down again quick, like it had grown teeth. She looked at me, and there was a moment we both heard exactly the same thing. "Sir," she said, very gentle now. "You okay?" I looked at the parking lot. The Camry was still there, still dragging its bumper. My truck was still there, dull white as a cloud that never rains. I looked at the corridor where the housekeeper stood with her hand on the phone and her eyes on the bed. I looked at the neon heart blinking and tried to match its rhythm with my breath and could not, no matter what. I held my keys harder than I meant to, and they cut my palm. I realized I was standing a little too close to the office window, like a man who has been trying to see his ghost in the glass. "I need to get out," I said, but I wasn't talking to her. I turned and started walking toward 71. I passed my truck and didn't look inside. I passed the ice machine that didn't work, and the soda machine that did, but only for Dr. Pepper. I passed the door to 12, which was closed again, shut gentle and complete. I kept walking. I heard the office phone ring once more behind me, then stop as if someone had listened and then chosen not to answer. I made it to the shoulder and then to the first light and then to the crosswalk button with its little silver face. I pressed it. I stood there in the noise of Austin and the smell of its heat, and I pressed it again, like prayer. If you ask me now what happened in that room, I will tell you that a place can learn you. It can take your wants and make hooks of them. I will tell you that you should not keep pictures in your pocket, not at night and not near an old phone that still remembers how to listen. I will tell you I got out and that should be enough. But here's the thing that keeps me up. Ever since that night, wherever I stay, cheap motel or my own bedroom back in San Marcos where the train runs soft at 2 a.m, the phone rings if there's a phone, and if there isn't, the noise finds a way. A tap on the window, a vibration on the nightstand. I answer and there I am on the line using the voice I used to lie to myself, asking me to leave, to walk, to give up my keys. Sometimes I hang up fast. Sometimes I listen. Sometimes I talk back. Sometimes I put the phone down and watch the red light blink like a heart in a jar. Sometimes I press my ear to the receiver and try to hear what version of me I'm saving. And sometimes the line is quiet and I can feel my own breath coming back at me. Warm and steady like a room with the air wrong. And I understand that maybe I didn't get out at all. Maybe I'm there still. Calling. The way a man thrown overboard keeps kicking in the dark water long after the boat is turned into a shadow. Maybe I am the ring that makes you stand up and reach. The voice that asks you to leave and the hook that pulls you back. If your phone rings late in a cheap room near Austin, and the voice on the other end sounds like yours, do me a favor. Don't wait. Don't look. Don't take the keys. Walk to the light. And if you hear me begging you to get out, know that I am doing my best, which is still not enough. My name is Caleb Runnels, and I'm from Wichita Falls. I took the seasonal fire watch up in the Panhandle because I needed quiet more than I needed money. I had burned up the better part of my 30s bouncing between refinery maintenance gigs in Borger and odd jobs along 287, and the noise had settled in my bones. You don't realize how loud your life is until you sit still and listen to the wind skate over a flat place. A ranger with Lake Meredith National Recreation Area said they were reopening one of the old towers, a CCC relic up on a low-rise north of Fritch, and if I could handle a cot, a radio, and a week's worth of canned chili, the job was mine. I said yes before he was done explaining where the outhouse was. The tower looked like a rusted metronome nailed to the horizon. A narrow spine of steps climbed to a glass box that had cooked all summer long without anyone inside it. The prairie rolled away in every direction, yellow and gray, mesquite clawing at the gullies. The Canadian River cutting a brown seam down toward Sanford Dam. On clear days you could see the gas flares near Borger wink at dusk, little orange eyes peering over the lip of the world. Trucks on 136 side by far below, the only proof that other people existed. My first morning, the supervisor from Amarillo, a woman named Valdez with dust in the creases of her boots, drove me out with a key and a Coleman cooler. She showed me how to log smoke sightings, how to use the Osborne Firefinder, how to call a false positive without sounding like a fool. Watch the ridgeline by Blue Creek, she said, pointing with a pencil stub. And don't let the wind talk you into anything. She squinted at me. Some folks think being alone up here means the place is empty. It's not. It's busy with everything you forgot to notice. After she left, the tower took a measure of me. The steps creaked. The guy wires hummed. The platform flexed slightly in the gusts. I unlocked the hatch and poked my head into a heat that smelled like sun-baked paper and mouse droppings. The observation room had a ring of windows, a splintered desk, the firefinder mounted like a compass altar in the middle, and a battered logbook beside the radio. The book was cloth-bound, black, thick as a Bible, the cover soft and greasy with use. I slid it closer, the grit squealing under the spine. And the first thing I noticed was the shallow gouge across the upper right corner, as if someone had dragged a key there out of habit. I signed my name on the fresh page like you do when you're trying to look steady. Date, weather, visibility. I noted a cattle burn east of Sanford that had scarred the grass a month ago. Then I set the book aside and walked the room in a slow circle, practicing the way I'd told myself I would. The world looked obedient and hot. The only smoke was a faint thread from a rancher's burn barrel near a double wide on FM 3395. I drank warm water and let the air move past my ears. Around noon, with the heat crawling up through the planks into the soles of my boots, I flipped open the logbook again. I thought I'd skim old entries, see who had worked here, read the usual notes about lightning strikes and teenagers with illegal fireworks. The handwriting was all kinds. Tight block letters, slanted loops, the nervous chicken scratch of someone who didn't belong to pens. Entries went back 20 years, then stopped, then picked up again after a gap. That's what happens to old towers. Funding arrives and vanishes. Politicians promise and forget. And finally somebody decides a tower is better occupied than not. I licked my thumb and turned a page. The top entry was dated that morning. Same date as the one I had written. That wasn't the odd part. The odd part was the writing itself. It looked like mine. Not similar, not close. Mine. The same narrow loops on the L, the same way I crossed a T too hard and left a notch. The hairs on my forearm lifted. A tide moving under skin. I read. Arrived at 08:30, unlocked hatch slow. Waited before stepping through because the room felt like an oven. Set cooler by desk. Valdez's truck idled at bottom 2 minutes before pulling away. Caleb noted the cattle burn east of Sanford, the barrel smoke near a trailer on 3395, and the sound of a hawk complaining. I looked at the page I had written. My entry was shorter and drier and tried to sound professional, but the details matched. Even the hawk, which I had heard and not thought worth writing down. I ran my finger along the date again and squinted at my name, at the way I had written Runnels in the register, and at the way the logbook had written Caleb like a friend might. I told myself I had misread the date, that there was another day with the same sky. But the day was still the same day, and the ink in the mimic entry was glossy like spilled oil. It soaked in while I watched, a tiny dark border collapsing into the cotton of the page. I leaned over the desk and listened for a radio prank, for the tick of a camera, anything to put me back on the side of a reasonable world, and heard nothing. Wind, dry insects. The metallic click my jaw makes when I swallow. I kept reading. At 12:13 he will thumb this page and wonder if somebody is playing with him. He will look at the radio. He will put his palm flat in the center of the desk, press down once, then lift his hand as if the wood were warm enough to burn him. At 12:15 he will say out loud, "No, sir." The clock above the window ticked in tiny, stubborn steps. It said 12:12. I wasn't the kind of man who takes orders from clocks or from books for that matter, but reason is a thing we use like fencing, thin and flexible. I took my hand off the desk and stood, then without thinking it through, put my palm flat in the center of the grayed wood and pressed my weight into it. The heat wasn't enough to burn. I lifted my hand anyway. The imprint of my palm flushed and faded in the dust. The clock said 12:14 now. I waited to see if I had learned anything about myself. I hadn't. The wind hit the glass in a long sigh and I said, "No, sir." I hadn't meant to. The words were an exhale that had decided it was a sentence. I turned all the way around then, a farmer on a strange field testing the give of the soil with his boot heel. The tower was empty but for one man with a bad idea in his hands. I slammed the book shut and went to the firefinder. Took bearings for the burn barrel near the trailer and for the blue water calmed behind Sanford Dam. Even used the radio to report that visibility was good and that a storm ridge was bulking up far west near Boy's Ranch. My voice sounded normal. There was nothing odd about a man taking his job serious on his first day. The book I didn't look at. Not for half an hour. When I did, it was open to a new page. The left-hand side had an old list. Names scratched in pencil, some ticked off, one erased to a ghost. The right-hand page waited like a set mouth. I touched it delicately. It was warm, but everything in that room was warm. I thought about taking it down the steps and leaving it under the tower in the shade, or tossing it into the dry weeds and watching if it wrote while it was airborne. I didn't do either. I did what I always do when I'm too curious to be smart. I sat and read. At 13:02, he will think of throwing the book. He will think about the hard dirt by the tower legs. He will see the indentations where old feet stood, the tangle of dropped cigarette filters half buried in dust. He will not throw it because he wants to know what happens when a person chooses. I breathed shallowly. I looked at the floor and saw the old filters, the cracked plastic caught in a web of grass blades. The time said 1:02 because the clock had decided to be the kind of proof a child can read. The air vibrated with the distant sawing of cicadas. I rubbed my mouth with the back of my hand and tasted salt. The book had known I would check. It had known I would want to be the sort of man who refused a script. But the wanting hadn't made me anything different. "Go on then," I said, which sounded like a dare and an apology. At 13:30, he will start to talk to the book. He will call it you as if it had a face. He will ask if somebody put a camera in here. He will ask if this is a training exercise. He will ask why the writing looks like his. At 1332, he will stop asking questions because a white pickup will pull onto the maintenance road, and the man in the truck will turn the engine off and sit without moving. I stood too fast. My knee hit the underside of the desk. Pain shot up my thigh, bright as a match head struck. I stumbled to the window and looked down at the track that ran along the chain-link fence. Dust hung over the road like smoke from a snuffed-out candle. Then the pickup, white and sun-bitten, nosed into view from behind a stand of scrub. It stopped directly below the tower, front grille aimed like a dog at a rabbit hole. The engine coughed twice and shut off. The man inside didn't get out. He wore a red ball cap and sunglasses. He sat and looked up, and even though his face was just a sheeny oval at that angle, I felt watched the way a boy feels watched when he pulls a thing from his father's toolbox he shouldn't have. The book thudded against my palm where I still held it, like a heart I had picked up by mistake. I put it on the desk and backed up from it. My fingers left powder smears. At 1336, he will wish Valdez had stayed. He will wish he had laughed when she told him the place was busy. He will say the word "sir" again when he hears the first knock. There will be 3 knocks on the hatch at exactly 1337. The knocks came like breath held then released. 1, 2, 3. The tower wasn't built for delicate sound. Every step in that spine of stairs telegraphed itself into the ribs of the structure, and a knock on the hatch was a blunt report in the soles of my feet. I swallowed. The clock stuttered its way to 1:37. It wasn't a ghost. There was a man with a red cap below who wanted to be inside the same square of air I was. I went to the hatch. The brass hasp was polished with fingers older than mine. "Who is it?" I asked. It felt corny as soon as I said it. In a place like this, if someone had a right to be here, they'd say their name first. "Ranger," the man said. His voice braided through the boards, and it was ordinary but flat, the way a voice sounds when you hear it over a payphone with bad lines. "Truck needs help." "Battery, maybe?" "Saw your truck is gone." "Not my truck," I said. Supervisor dropped me. My hand rested on the hasp like it belonged there. "I can radio in." "Radio's a delay," he said. "I'll be quick. It's strange what courtesy does to you when you're alone. It moves in like weather. Your mind argues both sides, the sensible and the specifically stupid. I stood by the hatch and saw the white pickup, bone-dry fields, the blue slab of sky, safe because it was all an open invitation to witness. I slid the hasp back and lifted the hatch enough to let a blade of superheated air cut my shins. Below me, the man put one hand on the rung and paused. He wore a gray t-shirt and jeans with the knees out. His sunglasses reflected a warped version of my face peering down, like a photo in a spoon. He smiled and started up. The logbook lay open on the desk where the light fell clean through the glass. There were new lines in it now. I didn't want to read, and I did. The room managed both. My eyes snagged on the words like dry grass on a pant cuff as I crossed to meet him at the top of the stairs. At 1340, he will see that the man's hat is from a feed store in Stinnett. The brim sweat-stained, the stitches blown. He will notice the man's left ear. Where the lobe is split like a cheap piercing went wrong. He will notice the smell of something sweet under the motor oil smell. Bubble gum. He will think of being young and chewing too fast on a summer night when he and his cousin snuck down to the water near the dam. He will back up and the man will duck inside, and then Caleb will realize the man never told him his name. He ducked inside. The glass room shrank to the dimensions of the two of us. I could smell him. Bubble gum under oil. He looked around with the polite pretend of a stranger who might not be a stranger. "Nice," he said, as if he meant the weather or the view or maybe the fact that we were exactly 2 men and one of us had a reason the other didn't. "The battery?" I said. "Started after all," he said. He smiled again, and I saw the place where a front tooth had been knocked out and poorly fixed. A wedge of color that didn't match. Figured I'd say hi. "Don't get many folk up here." "You're not with the park," I said. "Ain't," he said. The radio crackled in the silence and didn't complete a word. He drifted over to the firefinder and put 2 fingers on the brass. A boy about to spin something he shouldn't. The surface had been rubbed by 1,000 respectful hands, and the sight of his fingers there made something in me stiffen, like a dog hearing a strange car in its driveway. He watched me instead of the instrument, curious how I would object. I didn't. I didn't like knowing that he liked that. The book waited with its mouth open. I had the idea that if I closed it hard enough, the last line would bite my fingers. I went to it because everything in me wanted to know the ending of the minute we were inside. I glanced down, and the writing had continued with a calm hand. At 13:43, the man will ask for a drink. Caleb will tell him he has water. The man will say he wants something else. He will say, "You ever feel like you watched yourself do a thing before you did it?" Caleb will say, "Sometimes." The man will look at the logbook then. He will say, "Huh, what's this?" He will reach for it. Caleb will put his hand on the book first. "Got anything cold?" The man asked. "Water," I said. "Something else," he said. He wasn't asking. "Sometimes," I said. My voice shard dry because he had asked his question about watching yourself do a thing and I was moving through lines I didn't compose. He looked down at the book. The corner gouge caught the light. He stuck his tongue a little between his teeth. A reflexive concentration gesture children don't always grow out of. His hand came forward. I put my hand on the book first. His knuckles brushed the back of my hand. They were hotter than mine, almost feverish, or else I had cooled down without noticing. His gaze didn't move to our hands, though. It moved to my face and figured something out. "Word man, huh?" he said, but it wasn't a judgment. It was like he had located a piece on a board game and now knew the rules. The wind hit the west glass and the tower hunched. The radio spoke abruptly. Valdez's voice, clipped and distorted, asking for a check-in. The man didn't flinch. I pulled my hand off the book and went to the radio like the clockwork thing I had become. I keyed the mic. "Tower 1, I said. "All good." "All good," the man echoed softly, and that echo went down my back like ice water poured along the spine. "Storm building north-northwest," Valdez said. "Keep an eye. Folks in fridge say they can smell rain." "Copy," I said. I released the button. The man had drifted to the window that looked toward Stinnett. The white pickup down there looked innocent. The prairie looked like a map of a country with one city. I could see the dull stripe of 152 and beyond it, the hairline fractures of ranch roads. The book tugged at my eyes. When I looked, the writing was there waiting. At 13:47, the man will ask Caleb to read him something from the book. Caleb will say it's a log. He will say it's not for that. The man will squeeze the bridge of his nose and grin like he's caught a cat. He will say, "Read me what it says I'm going to do," and the book will say that the man is going to try the hatch and it will be locked, because Caleb relocked it without knowing when he did so. "Read me something," the man said. "It's a log," I said. "Not for that," he mimicked, the grin sitting in the split of his tooth. He went soft-eyed then, as if something in his head untied. "Read me what it says I'm going to do." "You can look yourself," I said. I didn't know why I thought it mattered, the way a child thinks it matters who flicks off the light at the end of a story. He looked at the hatch instead. He went to it and worked the hasp and found it secure. I didn't remember relocking it. My fingers tingled as if they had done a trick I didn't sign for. "Huh," he said again, and he seemed pleased, like the world had performed in the exact way that favored his patience. "You up here last season?" I asked. His tongue touched the strange tooth. He said nothing for a while. "Then you hear things in the wind," he said. "Sometimes it's talking about water. Sometimes it's talking about men. Your truck, okay?" I said, because that was the nearest small stone I could throw into a big pond. "I didn't drive up for help," he said. He turned his head and his sunglasses refused me again. I drove up to see if it still worked. "If what still worked," I said, already knowing. "The watch," he said, as if he were naming a dog. He nodded at the book, and I had to fight the feeling that he had tapped it from across the room. "What happens if I don't read?" I asked. My voice hardly sounded like anything. It sounded like the dry whisper of a man speaking into a hat. "You already did?" he said. The clock took another step. Time had never been a fence before. Now it was a shape I could put my cheek against to feel how strong it was. The book carried new lines in it like a current under a boat. At 13:51, Caleb will ask what happens if he doesn't read. The man will say he already did. Then thunder will lift along the far rim, and they will both flinch because it will sound like a door under their feet. At 13:52, the man will put his hand on the firefinder again. At 13:53, Caleb will understand that the book isn't predicting so much as remembering early. Thunder shouldered the horizon, a deep, slow roll. The tower answered with a short, hollow complaint. The man touched the firefinder, the brass showing a print that quickly dulled. I felt something like laughter trying to get out of me but failing, coming out a harsh breath through my nose. If the book was remembering early, then somewhere the two of us had already done this and were only now catching up. It was a rotten sort of mercy. It meant I wasn't responsible, and it meant I was entirely. The man leaned on the instrument as if it were the rail of a ship and said, "Conversational." You feel it too. I feel it, I said. Good, he said and tipped his head listening to the wind. Now we can do the next part. I didn't want a next part. I wanted an ending I could stand in like shade. The book said otherwise. At 13:56, the man will ask for Caleb's hand. He will say it like it is a polite thing, but it won't be. He will take Caleb's hand and press it to the page. The page will take the print in a way paper does not. It will drink the pattern like thirsty ground. The man will tell Caleb to keep reading. Caleb will keep reading even while some other part of him pulls backward hard for the door. Your hand, he said. Palm up like a request. No, I said, and my hand put itself in his. He pressed it down onto the page and the paper warmed in a way that frightened me more than heat should. The paper yielded slightly, not like wet fiber but like skin that has learned a thing too intimate. It took my print so gently that I wanted to cry. The lines of my palm shimmered into the white and stayed there in a faint shine that hung on longer than a stain. Keep reading, he said. I read. I read not because I had to, but because the part of me that doesn't want to be surprised ran ahead like a scout, too eager to be cautious. At 13:58, the man will ask Caleb for a story. Caleb will think of how he applied for this job, of the silence he wanted, of the last fight he had with a person he loved in a parking lot in Wichita Falls under a dead streetlight. He will not say any of that. He will say no story. At 13:59, the man will say there is always a story, and then he will tell his own. No story, I said. There is always a story, he said. He leaned his hip against the desk. The glass around us caught the sky and held it in panes like captured water. I used to mind the tower here, he said. Before the gap. They shut it down. Said money had to go where people could see it. Thing about the watch is it don't care if people can see. It cares if one man can. It learned me. I learned it. I wrote, it wrote. Then they closed up and it had to wait. He lifted his sunglasses with one finger and set them on his hat brim. His eyes were pale and anxious. The way eyes get when a man quits sleeping right. You think it's a trick of ink, but it's a way of remembering that leaks backward. You're crazy, I said. Maybe, he said, pleased like we had achieved intimacy. But the thing about the watch is it won't be alone. It needs a hand. I gave it mine and it used me all up. That's the trade. It will ask for yours. You'll give it. Or you won't, but you already did. I didn't, I said. And my palm print shone faint and greasy on the white page like proof engraved. Thunder shook itself in long, slow rolls until it sounded like something large moving under a house. Rain smell came plain as steel. The ridgeline near Blue Creek went dark with the first smear of gray. The radio squawked then, and I didn't pick it up. The man watched me not pick it up. He seemed happy in the way a man is happy when a fish swims into a net. What happens if I walk away? I asked. I pictured it. I pictured the white pickup, the path down, my boots hitting the dirt, the shock of solid ground. You won't, he said. And the logbook, like a friend who cannot help a bad truth, made it worse. At 14:03, Caleb will think of walking away. At 14:04, he will put his hand on the book a second time. At 14:05, he will finally read the line that tells him how the last ranger left, and he will understand that the last ranger never left at all. How did you leave? I whispered. He smiled. It was the smallest smile I've ever seen, like the curve on a fish hook. You tell me, he said. I read. I read with my throat full. The wind huffed under the hatch and made the room flex again. The rain slapped the west facing in a scatter of loud pennies. At 14:05, he will read this line. At 14:06, he will look up and the man will be gone and will still be there. At 14:07, he will understand that a thing can be two ways at once. The last ranger's name was Miller. He wrote for 6 seasons, and then he wrote a line he was not supposed to write. He wrote, I am not here, and the watch wrote, he is. He stayed after that, not the way bodies do. The watch remembers people early and late both. It has to. It is alone if it does not. Miller is what you hear when the wind wants to be a person. My hand went numb on the edge of the page. The man in the hat watched me with a loving patience that frightened me more than any anger could. You think the wind is the wind, he said. You think the knocks are knocks. You think I drove up today? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Maybe the watch wanted you to see the truck so you'd open the hatch. Maybe it opened itself through you. You asked what happens when a person chooses. The joke is old, Caleb. You choose like a river chooses the lower ground. I don't accept that, I said, and I wanted the words to be bigger than the room. You will, he said. The rain came hard then, sweeping sideways across the panes, turning the world a quick gray. Lightning made the glass go white and then slow itself back to clear. The radio barked my name with urgency that smelled like sparking wire and wet dust. I didn't answer. I slid my hand onto the book because that was what the line said I would do, and because I wanted to be touching the thing that was hurting me. The warmth moved up through my arm and into my shoulder. Not heat really, familiarity. The book knew me like a hand knows a hammer handle. The next entry I read my name into, it seized the words and pulled them inside. At 14:11, Caleb will try to write an opposite. He will try to write, I am leaving now, and the watch will write, he stays. At 14:12, the man will put his sunglasses back on. At 14:13, the thunder will make the tower shiver right down to its bolts, and Miller will laugh in the wind because he is proud of how well the tower stands. I took the pencil in my shaking hand and I wrote, I am leaving now. The letters were ugly and furious. The page drank them as gently as it had drunk my palm. The line beneath it arrived like a vein surfacing. He stays. No, I said. Yes, the man said. He moved to the hatch and put his hand on the hasp without moving it. He lowered his sunglasses and nodded to me like a neighbor does when he sees you at the feed store and knows everything he needs to. Storm will tear up toward Stinnett, he said, tracking the sky. You'll call it in. You'll say the words just right. That part is yours. That part is still you. The rest changes you won't feel until you wake to find you wrote something while you slept. He tapped the logbook's cover lightly. When the page starts before you do, you'll be afraid again, but it won't be as bad as today. What do you get? I asked. What did you get, Miller? His head tilted once, a bird's motion. He seemed to consider the name like a coin he had swallowed years ago and forgotten. You don't get things, he said. You are given to something. That's the kind of getting it is. He opened the hatch then, smoothly, like a man opening a door he has opened every day for a long time. You'll think sometimes about the man you might have been if you never heard the knocks. That man's not a ghost. He's a math problem with a number missing. The watch doesn't eat people. It just remembers us too well. That feels like hunger if you stand too close. He went down the steps. 1, 2, 3. The weight of him moving through the tower like a voice through bone. I followed to the hatch and watched him become less of a man and more of a redcap shape shrinking in rain. He stepped into the white pickup. The engine either started or had always been running. It pulled away and the dust that should have lifted didn't, because the rain had tamped it flat. He was there and he never had been, and the book held both with no strain at all. I went back to the desk. The radio demanded my attention and I gave it. I called in the storm push and gave bearings. I spoke this world's language, right? My voice calmed Valdez's because that is one thing a voice can do regardless of books. Then I set the mic down and put my hand on the cover of the log like a man might put his hand on a dog's neck. Not to hold it, not to pet it, but to feel the small living lurch that means the heart is inside. The rain eased. Lightning walked itself away, counting numbers as it went. Near 5, the sun slid out under the storm's heel and turned the prairie into a bronze plate. The water on the windows dried in uneven skeins. The book warmed my skin through the cloth. I ate a cold chili straight from the can and the metal edge hurt my teeth. I thought about not sleeping. I thought about propping my eyelids open with stubbornness. Around 9, a fatigue old as the ground put a friendly hand on my neck and I turned off the lantern and lay on the cot. Shoes off, pants still on. The way a man lays when he wants to pretend he might get up again quick. The night slid into the room between the glass panes and the world. Wind talked a low language. Somewhere below, something small trotted past, leaving prints like punctuation in the sand. I don't know if I slept. I must have. I must have because when I reached in the dark for the book, I had moved to the floor beside me. My fingers found it already open, and the page had been turned, and the writing was there ahead of me. My name. My voice bent into letters. I looked over the words the way a man looks down a strange stair. At 0431, he will wake thinking of a streetlight that never worked, and of a woman who told him he did not know how to be quiet. He will reach for the book in the dark. He will be comforted to find it near. He will be scared about being comforted. At 0432, he will write to the next one. Something hardened in me and softened too, the way clay does when it meets water. I stood and set the book on the desk. I sharpened the pencil with my pocket knife, slow, making a little mound of cedar shavings that smelled like a clean church. The east was paling beyond Stinnett. The windows held the first suggestion that the world would exist again. I thought about writing anything else. I thought about writing a recipe for chili. I thought about writing a phone number I didn't remember. Instead, I wrote, and the writing was mine because that was the bargain. Welcome, I wrote, then crossed it out. I wrote, you should leave, then the book returned, he does not. I wrote, my name is Caleb Runnels, and I'm from Wichita Falls. And as I wrote it, the sentence belonged to the page as if it had been waiting there under the fibers all along, as if it had wanted that exact shape of breath for a long time. I kept writing. I wrote what I would have wanted to read yesterday. The cautions and the small roads out that aren't roads. I lied once in there and the paper rejected it cleanly, leaving a white place that refused ink. And I learned a rule that didn't surprise me. When Valdez's truck shimmered up the road near 9, my hand cramped so bad I had to open it with the other. The world had driven back into being, tires and voices and coffee breath and a joke about the storm that had knocked the power out in a block of apartments south of Amarillo. I answered her questions right. I signed my name in the morning's entry in the other book, the government one, and I smiled like a man who likes the work. After she left, I unlocked the hatch slow and waited before stepping through. I set the cooler by the desk. I noted the cattle burn and the barrel smoke and the complaint of the hawk. Then I opened the book that remembers and I read the line where it had already written me reaching for it. There is an end to this kind of story. It could be tomorrow. It could be when the wind pulls the tower into the pasture like a toy. It could be when the park closes the place again because money wants to be seen. Or it could be when I write a line I am not supposed to write. The last ranger wrote, I am not here, and the watch wrote, he is, and so he is. Sometimes when the storm slides across the Canadian and the tower flexes and the glass rattles, I hear a laugh under the sound, and it makes me feel like the tower is a shoulder and a man has leaned on it. It is an okay feeling. It is terrible. If you have made it this far and if the book has taught you to read your own steps before you take them, and if you are the sort of person who thinks they can flip a coin against the wind and make it land the way they like, then I will say the one thing that is mine to say. People talk about fate when they want to pretend a choice couldn't be otherwise. The watch does not care for the word. It cares for recording. It cares for company. It tells you what you are going to do because it already knows you. If that makes you want to run, run. If you stay, use a pencil. The page takes ink too greedily. It is near noon now. The light is white on the grass. The ridge by Blue Creek looks tame until it doesn't. Down by the fence, an old cigarette filter has freed itself and rolled a little in the wind. I drink water. I thumb this page and ask myself if somebody's playing with me. I press my hand flat on the desk. I look at the radio. No, sir, I say, and it has been a long time since those words belonged to anybody but me. If the white pickup turns onto the maintenance road, I will stand and watch from the west pane until the engine cuts and the man in the red cap lifts his face. I can pretend I don't know the knocks. I can count the seconds anyway. I can put my hand over these words and feel the heat rise. I can hear the wind in the guy wires, busy with everything I forgot to notice, and somewhere in it a laugh that says, we stand good, don't we? We stand good. We stand.